victims suffered violent deaths after investigations showed that several bodies were riddled with bullets. The incident follows 8 months of war between Ethiopia's central government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. The governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, went into the weekend still the governor of New York, despite a damning report accusing him of the sexual harassment of 11 women. Impeachment proceedings are now progressing in the state's legislature. Assemblyman Michael Montesano sits on the State Assembly Judiciary Committee.
I think he'll resign, but I think he's going to hold out as long as he can in this 30-day period to use that resignation as a bargaining chip with the district attorneys that are looking into him for criminal charges. So our intention at this point to have everything wrapped up by the end of this month. And if he hasn't resigned by that point, we will introduce and pass articles of impeachment.
The financial markets approved of Friday's job numbers in the US, but what does the week ahead portend? From FSN's business desk in New York, Li-Ling Tan reports.
Summer is in full gear as we head into the second week of August, with the Federal Reserve keeping tabs on the labour market to guide policy. With inflation already past the Federal Reserve's 2% target, we could see further signs of a rollback in stimulus spending. Much of that, however, will have to wait a bit, as it will hinge on the August jobs report later in the month, after July saw 943,000 jobs added and an unemployment rate that fell to 5.4%. Eyes and ears will be on the annual Jackson Hole Conference on August 26, when central bankers are due to meet. Li-Ling Tan, New York.
And a fast note to say that is Li-Ling's final dispatch for FSN from New York. She's been a stalwart member of the team there for almost a decade, and we wish her well as she relocates to Asia. Stories we'll be covering in the coming week. The EU will discuss travel restrictions on Americans as Delta cases surge, and officials from the Venezuelan government and opposition are expected to hold talks in Mexico City. Those stories here and on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Alison Fry and Peter Hartman are a long-term couple. They've been trying out an open relationship that frees them to emotionally burden and exhaust other people.
We're both grown-ups. We both trust each other. It just seemed like the right time to open ourselves up to meeting other people and barraging them with our crippling emotional neediness.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I still want to vent to Allison about all the anxieties I have at the office until she wishes I would just shut the up. But sometimes you just get the urge to sap the life out of a different woman for a change.
The flexible arrangement has allowed Fry and Hartman to participate in a variety of tiresome and psychologically draining one-off encounters with partners ranging from close acquaintances to total strangers.
Of course, there was a time when I couldn't imagine saddling anyone but Peter with my extensive emotional baggage and trust issues, but now that we've tried it...
The best part is, when we're back together, all we really want to do is drain the living out of each other.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You're welcome to join 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line for you to do that. Take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever is on your mind. 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
Rich. And it's Ian.
And, you know, this isn't the first time I've heard that Alex Jones was right about something. It turned out he was relatively correct. And I say relatively correct. He wasn't entirely correct about the frogs turning gay. As it happens, we are, in fact, making the fish trans. I don't know if we're making the frogs gay, but because of all of the birth control and stuff like that getting flushed out into the oceans, we are, in fact, making fish trans.
I'm convinced that given a long enough timeline, Alex Jones will be right about everything.
Well, he has been talking about, you know, the government weather change programs and stuff like that, and then India suddenly has the capability of, you know, making it rain to solve their drought. So.
Right. The lights are spying on you. Well, guess what? You got smart light bulbs now that send data back to the home office. So
yeah, I mean,
it sounds crazy until he's right.
Well, he sounds crazy more often than he sounds sane, and you know, so he's a very theatrical person. So some of the ways he portrays these things are just outlandish and entertaining, but very, very difficult to take seriously.
Maybe. Okay. So yes and no. And what I've had to caveat with friends is I go like, well, okay, you can listen to Alex Jones. Fine. But what you have to do is like separate the facts that he provides on the matter with the hyperbole that comes after it. Because if you go to InfoWars or Prison Planet, right, every article has like a long list of citations from where they got that information. Yeah.
So I don't think I've been to InfoWars or Prison Planet in 5 or 6 years.
Okay. It is well cited in the article, and then he just stretches it on air.
Sure.
To make it sound like a lot crazier than it is, but they go, well, no, here's all the sources, the studies, whatever that he's claiming this information is from.
I prefer the Space Ghost approach to Alex Jones, which is just imagining him being interviewed on the Adult Swim show, Space Ghost.
Coast to Coast.
Yes. That makes the whole thing more sensible in context. You know, it makes someone screaming about gay frogs a lot more reasonable if, you know, they're on Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
I would have loved to have
it
seen
on the
that.
View. Oh.
He never was on Space Ghost, though, was he?
No, he wasn't. But a lot of really clever people have done creative edits that make it, you know, next best thing.
That make it look like he's on Space Ghost?
And,
neat.
And it's really good.
Yeah,
so if you ever get a chance to look that up, definitely do it.
Even the Turning the Frogs Gay electronic music remix, right?
That's the best. That's one of the best things ever. The electronic remix of Turning the Frogs Gay. Yeah, that one was good.
So what he's right about this time, according to RT.
Right, relatively correct about.
However you want to phrase it. The article says Alex Jones was right, but then there's a question mark. U.S. government-funded projects harvests organs from aborted babies for medical research. Documents show.
Well, isn't this common news? Like, wasn't it well known that they were using the fetal tissues of aborted babies to do research?
I'm pretty sure they were denying it as much as they could, because a lot of times what came along with that was these babies are alive when they pull them out, and then they're killing them or letting them die so that they can then harvest the tissues.
I thought that was more or less the entire thing behind stem cell research, was that was how they got most of these stem cells. And that's why the Republican right was all up in arms about stem cell research.
I don't know the facts of that one, but I want to say I don't think it was from aborted babies like the way that you would think going down to Planned Parenthood. I think they were like artificially inseminating eggs and then doing research on, you know, like the cell body that in the lab.
Okay.
And then if you're on the Christian right, that goes like, well, once you fertilize the egg, that organism is alive, and now you're killing humans.
Well, that's certainly what the Christian right would argue.
Right. But I think that that's where the science would go, as opposed to, no, we're just waiting at Planned Parenthood for them to dump out a new batch of babies and we're going to go steal some organs.
I don't know. I was in high school the last time I looked into, you know, the debate behind stem cell research and what was going on with it. So I don't really know. I just know it had something to do with aborted fetal tissues and them doing research.
Right. So this U.S. funded a project that collects body parts from aborted babies, some of them apparently alive moments before their organs are harvested. New documents show prompting claims that conspiracy theorists have been vindicated.
This isn't surprising to me, though. I thought it was just like well known.
Again, I want to say it's the circles that you run in.
Okay.
Like if you
probably
the people we hang out with and the theories that come out.
Speaking of the people we hang out with, that's something I wanted to get into. Not to derail from the Alex Jones article, but I went to the bar last night with some friends, totally non-libertarians, just ordinary people. In fact, they lean hard left. They're all Democrats, but in the course of the conversations, one thing became very, very clear. The only reason they got vaccinated was in the hopes that they could take off the masks.
Oh.
And these are hardcore Democrats. These were people who went hard Bernie in 2000, whatever it was.
Well, for 2 weeks, they were allowed to take off the mask.
Yes, and they're upset. They are not happy about the inevitable return of the mask mandates because they feel like a giant bait and switch was just pulled over them.
You think?
Where, the whole reason,
is this the first time they've ever paid attention to what government says?
Probably. I mean, they're like 21, 22 years old, so very likely.
Poor guys.
So
it's like that meme of the hangings, your first time, huh?
Yeah. Getting the wool pulled from their eyes, very good. I'm like, yeah, this is what the government does.
Get used to it.
Repeatedly.
Yeah.
They sell you something, and then they make you buy it back, and then they take it back from you again, and then you just don't have it anymore, and you're that much poorer for having bought it from them in the first place.
I don't know what the approach is at that point, because for me it'd be like, okay, you can spend the next 7 to 10 years of your life like figuring this out, or you just trust me now and shift towards that more freedom mindset, voluntarist, libertarian, whatever label you want to put on it, and work towards that. Otherwise, you're like setting yourself up for a decade of heartache before you go like, yep, I should have figured that out a long time ago.
This is one of the reasons I liked Barack Obama, because I liked what he had to say when he first ran in 2008 or whatever it was. And then, he was all about peace and anti-war and all of this other nonsense. Yeah. But then he came along and absolutely none of that happened. I was like, oh, okay. They're all liars, and they're going to just continue doing whatever it is they want to do, and it doesn't matter what they say on the campaign trail. So I owe Obama a huge debt of gratitude for revealing that to me at such a young age.
He won the Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah. He's a peace guy.
Yes, and he's the only Nobel Peace Prize winner to ever ordered bombs to be dropped on Doctors Without Borders hospitals.
And to keep operating a torture facility.
Yes, that's also true, because he was supposed to close Guantanamo Bay. And, of course, never did.
He's the most honest president we've had. He said it. There's record. What the state is, a monopoly on violence.
He did say that.
He did say that.
Did you see the recent photos and video from his birthday party?
No, I saw that there was a thing about it, but I didn't click through to see what it was.
Well, as you might imagine, he wasn't wearing a mask, and many of the guests weren't either.
Okay.
And it started off as a huge soiree event, and then they tried to scale it back because there was outburst against it.
Well, that's because people were posting photos and video, and then
it was
stopped.
one of the DJs that was doing it, right?
Yeah, and one of the superstars that was attending it as well, and those have been removed from the internet at this point. Except people copied them, thankfully.
Well, that's good, because it would be good for these people who looked up to Obama and who look up to Biden and who look up to any of these politicians to face what they really are, which is liars who do as I say, not as I do.
Mm-hmm. One rule for me, another set for you.
I wish they did that, though. As far as my social media is concerned, those Obama supporters look the other way rather than face it head on.
Sure. That's cognitive dissonance for you.
Absolutely is cognitive dissonance. But I think you get more of that than you get people being woken up.
Well, they have a long history of cognitive dissonance. I remember arguing with Obama supporters in 2016, 2017, where they insisted that, no, he ended the war in Iraq and he brought all the troops home. And it doesn't matter what the facts actually were. They believed that, and nothing could convince them otherwise, because Obama said he was going to do it. They probably, to this day, think that Gitmo has been closed.
Yeah. Well, you don't hear much about it anymore. It's not everyday news in the news cycle.
No, and that's tragic. This illegal torture facility that the United States government is maintaining in Cuba never gets a word of mention in the media, except for the one guy I think who was recently released.
Yeah, he's been there for 20 years or 19 years.
Yeah, and ultimately just released. Oh, we got the wrong guy. Sorry for stealing 2 decades from you and torturing you through it.
Have a nice day.
You can join us, 603-283-6160. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
I think you guys should be encouraging people to drop the drugs, drop the alcohol, and live a straight life.
Why?
And that's freedom. That is freedom.
How can you say? I mean, maybe it's freedom for you, but what if I enjoy altering my consciousness?
Well, I think it's sad.
Why?
It's a sad existence when people have to be addicted to drugs and alcohol.
Oh, I'm not addicted.
Now you're assuming addiction.
Alcohol, we're talking about marijuana, we're talking about drug use in general.
What about caffeine? Are we talking about caffeine?
I'm talking about something that what you just said is mind-altering.
So caffeine certainly
if you
is.
eat a chocolate candy bar, if you have a chocolate candy bar and there's caffeine in it, it doesn't get you high.
Oh,
you know what the difference
well, wait a
is.
minute.
Christy, I'm sensitive to caffeine, and I can tell you 2 Diet Cokes will make me a very angry man.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you want to join us. That's 603-283-6160. And you know, I'm torn on Alex Jones. I mean, he has done a lot of really good work throughout his career. Like,
he has.
His documentaries have always been top-notch and have usually been pretty solid, like The Obama Deception, and I can't think of any of the others by name.
Police State, parts 1 through 3, 4, something like that.
He's done some really good stuff, but then at the same time, he's also done some really crazy stuff, like the 1999 hoax invasion of the United States by the Russian military, where he was live streaming and basically saying that he saw Russian military jets invading the United States airspace and just fabricating
This was in 1999?
Yes.
Huh.
Just fabricating stuff on the spot that was demonstrably not true and demonstrably did not happen.
Now, I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, but isn't it possible he was doing like a radio drama kind of thing? Like, the War of the Worlds?
Sure, it's possible.
It's
it
not
doesn't
impossible.
seem to be his shtick, though.
But I don't think that's what he was doing. But I mean, he was describing seeing Russian soldiers being fired at by
he wasn't
American
obviously
soldiers.
Seeing that, right? Like,
No,
he was
he
completely making it up.
Yes, but was he?
That's radio drama.
Was he? No, that's fabricating stories. I mean, I don't know
what's the difference.
I would have to go back and, because I think he was painting it as, this is real, this is what I'm actually witnessing, not this is a drama, this is fictitious. I think he was like, this is really happening.
Well, to be fair, War of the Worlds was like that, which is why a lot of people thought that was an alien invasion.
No, they had a disclaimer every time they came back from break or something like that, from what I've heard.
Okay.
That's what I've heard.
Okay.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
I've heard different, and I wasn't there either.
But Alex Jones, I don't think, did any sort of disclaimer whatsoever. But, he has still done a lot of really good work. And,
right.
among those were things like, as Ian said, prison state and the Obama deception, and even stuff he says on his website and on his radio show, or I think it's a radio show, are still...
It's an audio production at this point.
They're good at their core if you can distill out the Alex Jones-ness of it and just look at what is actually at the core of it.
That's what I said. Separate the facts from like the hyperbole that goes after the facts. Like he will give you the facts and then he will make up a story about it. But if you can eliminate the fantasy of the story, go like, well, this is actually happening because these are the facts, and again, sources have been cited, then there's information to be gained from listening to his productions.
Unlike most radio dramas, the station break during War of the Worlds would come about 2/3 of the way through, not at the halfway mark. Apparently, no one in the company realized that listeners who tuned in late and missed the opening announcement, so there may have been a disclaimer before it began, would have to wait almost 40 minutes for a disclaimer explaining the show was fiction. So if you tune in, radio people are tuning in all the time. You tune in 5 minutes into this thing, they're talking about aliens invading and, they're making it sound like it's the real deal. And you tune out 20 minutes later because you're freaking out and trying to get your family to safety. You didn't hear the disclaimer.
And this is not the fiction channel either. This is the news channel.
And this makes me sound like I think they did this on purpose. Why else would they extend the breaks like that?
Well, according to this, it was they were passing their notes to one of the other co-writers or whatever for last-minute rewrites. The first act grew longer and the second act got shorter, leaving the script somewhat lopsided. And then, again, most dramas, they would have stopped halfway, but radio audiences had come to expect that fictional programs would be interrupted on the half hour for station identification, but they didn't do that.
Right, but if it's an alien invasion being covered by the news, you would not expect a commercial break.
Correct. People who believe the broadcast to be real would be even more convinced when the normal station break didn't come at the typical time.
Yeah, this was either intentional on their part or shockingly reckless.
I'm going to say definitely intentional. I'm going to lean toward intentional because that's, in my mind,
suspending the commercial break is that's not a smart move when they were doing something like this.
The revisions, this by the way from Smithsonian Magazine that I'm reading, the revisions also removed several clues that might have helped late listeners figure out the invasion was fake. 2 moments that interrupted the fictional news broadcast with regular dramatic scenes were deleted or revised. And at one of the writer's suggestion, Koch also removed some of the specific mentions of the passage of time, such as one character's reference to last night's massacre. The first draft had clearly established the invasion occurred over several days, but the revision made it seem as though the broadcast was proceeding in real time. As many observers later noted, having the Martians conquer an entire planet in less than 40 minutes made no logical sense. But of course, hysterical people aren't going to be paying close attention to the details.
Well, if they're advanced enough, they could probably do it in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Or like you said, if you're just tuning in and tuning out, you're not listening to the whole thing.
I mean, if you tune into a radio station, though, and you hear it's that what sounds like Martians taking over the planet, would you really just turn your radio off and
no, that's when
go back to your cup of tea or whatever?
You keep your keys in the ignition even though you've gotten to where you were going.
Yeah. I would leave the radio on, but I would definitely be making preparations for something in the background. If I believed it.
It does sound like they intentionally made this sound like it was really happening.
Yeah.
This is, they're saying it was they're saying it was an accident. That's probably after the fact, them coming up with excuses.
When they realized how much hysteria they caused.
Yeah. Right.
Just like with the clown sightings of 2016 or whatever it was. Where,
I remember those.
Which was almost certainly a viral campaign for the remake for the remake of It. But then they were like, oh my God, people actually flipped out and now they're panicking, they're hysterical. We can never claim responsibility for this. Let's just let it die.
This is an interesting story about War of the Worlds. I'll post it on our social media for anybody that wants to read the whole thing here. It's social.freetalklive.com. You can find it there.
So Alex Jones is right, or was right, about organ harvesting from aborted fetuses being used for research by the American government.
Yep. The Department of Health and Human Services has awarded at least $2.7 million to a University of Pittsburgh program that sought to create a quote-unquote tissue hub sourced from aborted fetuses ranging from 6 to 42 weeks gestation. 42 weeks equates to more than 10 months pregnancy.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. That seems
so overdue and then aborted, and then harvested. Details about the program emerged after conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch and the Center for Medical Progress obtained 252 pages of documents as part of a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit brought against the HHS. In its 2015 grant application to the HHS, the University of Pittsburgh explained that it had been, quote, collecting fetal tissue for over 10 years, including liver, heart, gonads, legs, brains, genitourinary tissues, including kidneys, uterus, and bladders, unquote.
That's so dark. Can you imagine putting that on your resume? I've been collecting aborted fetus organs for 10 years. I am qualified to do this.
I mean, if that's the job you're looking for, right? That's experience for you.
I can't imagine what job could
Where are you going to
really
get that
be-
sort of education? Yeah, education and experience, man. I've read all the books about harvesting fetal tissues and organs, but now I got to put it into practice.
I suppose so. I mean, what was the research that the University of Pittsburgh was doing here? Does it say? I mean,
there specifically were sought to create a tissue hub sourced from all those aborted fetuses. So they were just collecting it and then, I guess, dispersed out for further research.
I'd have to know what tissue hub meant for that. Okay. What are your thoughts on this? How should this whole thing have been handled? 603-283-6160. 42 weeks. Seems a bit odd. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review, and the week ended with the US finally passing the 50% threshold, more than half the country now fully vaccinated against COVID-19. It's taken much longer than the Biden administration wanted, and there are still an estimated 90 million Americans refusing to get jabbed. This week, the US spurned a proposal by the World Health Organization to put booster jabs on pause until at least 10% of the population in every country worldwide has had a first vaccine. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said from America's perspective, that was a non-starter.
We've taken action on the global level far more than any country around the world, but we believe we can do both.
Germany also rejected the idea and will press ahead with boosters next month. America's economic recovery was underscored by jobs numbers on Friday that showed the US gaining nearly 1 million jobs in July. President Biden hailed the news at the White House.
What is indisputable now is this: the Biden plan is working, the Biden plan produces results, and the Biden plan is moving the country forward.
But some economists worry about the impact of the Delta variant on next month's numbers. On Thursday, for the first time since February, the US marked 100,000 new cases of COVID-19. United Airlines told its staff in the US, no jab, no job, becoming the largest private employer to require vaccination. Amazon told its corporate staff they won't be returning to the office now until next year. The sprinter Kristina Timanovskaya is spending her first weekend in Poland after raising the alarm in Tokyo when Belarusian officials tried to force her to fly home early from the Olympics. Stuart Smith in FSN's Moscow bureau covered the story.
The sprinter said she never meant her statements critical of the Belarusian Olympic Committee to be interpreted as political criticism, but in a country where the president only months ago relinquished his 25-year chairmanship of the Olympic Committee to no one other than his son, done. That seems to have been exactly what's happened.
And the week ended with the International Olympic Committee revoking the accreditation of 2 Belarusian coaches. The British government relaxed travel restrictions on some countries, including France. Brits returning from there will no longer have to quarantine. There were awful scenes on the Sudanese side of the Ethiopian border. Scores of bodies washed up on a riverbank, many of them with bullet wounds. FSN's Michael Baleke in Kampala says the victims appeared to be ethnic Tigrayans.
Humanitarian agencies involved in retrieving the corpses claim the victims suffered violent deaths after investigations showed that several bodies were riddled with bullets. The incident follows 8 months of war between Ethiopia's central government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us, 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line for you to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
Rich.
And it's Ian.
And we were just talking about movies because I'm actually looking forward to one that's coming out soon.
Really?
Yeah, there's a sequel to Candyman, as I understand it. Candyman I had never seen until like 2 years ago. I never watched the original. But I watched the remake, and I was really surprised by the productions behind it and the storytelling behind it. It was surprisingly good for what you expected to be, just a cheap, crappy movie. But they're making a sequel to it, and I don't know if it's going to be in theaters or not. Are theaters even open? Are they making movies?
No, you can go to theaters. They're open.
I've seen movie trailers that say exclusively in theaters. Now, some movies are coming out on both HBO Max and in theaters, as I understand it.
Like for a while, Fast 9 was theater only, if you wanted to.
And Disney's getting sued over something like this. I don't know the details of it. It's one of the Marvel movies. They released it to streaming platforms, and evidently the actress is not happy that she didn't make enough money.
Yep. The Black Widow movie, Scarlett Johansson. So it's debatable whether it's the actress or the actress's people and agents, right? But their side is suing because part of her pay is based on box office ticket sales.
Does that not include streaming?
Does not include streaming because it's box office ticket sales.
Oh my gosh!
So they dual released
That's screwed up,
right? They released it on HBO Max or whatever, Disney Plus, and the box office like at the same day, and it performed very poorly at the box office. Go figure.
Yeah, I imagine everything is these days, considering, they are simultaneously releasing movies to streaming services, and so many people are afraid to go out. I went to the grocery store today, and I was just shocked by the number of people there here in New Hampshire who were just wearing masks
still.
Even though most people are vaccinated, there's no mandates, and it's just...
Right, and don't forget that in the movie business, Los Angeles and New York City are two of the big markets as far as people seeing movies, or at least they were. Yeah. And for a long time, they didn't even have theaters open at all. Of course, as you know, New York City's mandating vaccines now for anybody to go do indoor activities, and I know theaters are included on that. So that's also the place where people are the most afraid because they're full of, obedient government serfs who believe everything that they're told. So I suspect box office returns are dismal in those two cities right now.
Well, there was one report that I heard where this result could have cost her like $50 million. Like that's the swing. Like if they just released in theaters, she could have expected to make $50 million more.
I don't know if that's true in today's climate, man.
Well, that's the thing.
That's why it's going to be arbitrated.
I mean, have you looked at this story in detail? Does anybody know whether her contract specifies that they have to only exclusively release her movie in theaters? Because if it doesn't, I don't think she's got a case.
Right. I hear what you're saying, and I don't know the details of that. I would think it doesn't have that in the contract because the likelihood is she signed the contract well before any sort of COVID pandemic, and there was no expectation that there would be dual releases upon signing.
Yeah,
right?
I would expect it to say something like, the movie would be released in theaters, and then, after their, what was it, 90 days or something like that, it would be released on the DVD.
Yeah.
I imagine it said something like that and just never made any mention of streaming services.
Because why would you put it?
Yeah, it wasn't in the paradigm at that time.
Right. But it is now. And like our own little theater here in Keene, the Colonial, it still isn't open. I don't know.
They're under construction, it looks like.
Is that what's going on with it?
I believe so.
That depends. I mean, are they ever going to open again?
Well,
I'm not convinced they are, because I mean they bought this fear-mongering stuff from the very start.
They're adding on to the building. Like they had construction stuff out back and they were adding to it. So I think that they do plan to reopen. They're not just like doing fixes inside. They're actually adding something to it. But another question is, what's the local movie theater doing? Are they still requiring masks from people walking? Because it was that you had to put a mask on to go from the ticket window into the theater, and then they'd let you take it off. And you and I actually went and protested this, Aria.
Well, we tried to go watch Back to the Future.
Yeah.
I don't know if it really counts as a protest, but we did try to go watch Back to the Future, and we didn't want to put on masks. And we
walked away.
Yes, and they told us we couldn't come in.
I mean, we didn't make a stink about it.
No.
We weren't rude. We just turned around and said, okay, well, you're not getting our business.
So I also want to suggest that your mask experience is local to you as well, because I don't go grocery shopping very often, but they did release they lifted the mask mandate, and one of the first places I ended up going to with the wife was like Trader Joe's, which was one of the first places to really lock down and mask up.
That's a really liberal kind of
they're sort of like the co-op, right?
Right.
Okay.
And I went into Trader Joe's, and it was a complete reversal as soon as the mask mandate was lifted. Right, like the vast majority of people were unmasked, walking around, smiling, doing their thing, and there was a couple hangers on. I'd say back to 95 to 5%.
Bonnie and I were at Target today, and Target tends to have more masks than Walmart does, and it was probably about 40%, I would say, were masked.
Yeah. So, but I live in a different city than you guys.
I would guess it was about 70% of the workers I saw at the grocery store today were wearing masks. And I don't know if it's because, they have a company policy in place where you can only take off the mask if you get vaccinated or whatever. But, anyone who's still wearing their mask and holding out on the vaccine, they're just not going to be swayed at this point by that argument. Oh, look, if you get vaccinated, you can take your mask off, because if they're paying attention, it's pretty clear that in 6 to 8 weeks, the mask mandates are going to be back.
Yep.
Well, if you want to talk more about the movie industry, there's a guy who made his name in the film business. He was the head of Paramount Pictures and 20th Century Fox.
Okay, so that's a pretty big name.
Yeah, his name's Barry Diller. According to NPR, this article came out last month. Again, he was chairman and CEO of 2 Hollywood studios. He is now declaring the movie industry dead. Quote, "The movie business is over. The movie business, as before, is finished and will never come back," he said in an exclusive interview with NPR from Sun Valley Conference, which is a media and technology conference in Idaho. And he says that has to do with the substantial decline in ticket sales and the closure of movie theaters during the coronavirus pandemic. And Diller, the chairman and senior executive of IAC, a company that owns internet properties, says, though it's much more than that. According to Diller, who ran those companies decades ago, streaming has altered the film industry in substantial ways, including the quality of movies being made now. Last year, several conglomerates, including Disney and Warner Media, decided to debut new releases in movie theaters and on streaming services simultaneously, which we covered here on Free Talk Live.
I think he's probably right that it's I don't know if it's over, but it's definitely changing.
He said that
I think it's going to have to be over. I mean, the business model isn't sustainable. It's just like the video game industry and the music industry. If the most,
like selling games on CD or DVD or whatever, it's going out.
Well, I mean, just games in general.
Unfortunately.
A game publisher has to sell, 12, 14, 15 million copies of a game in order for it to be considered a success. Yeah. And that's just not a sustainable model to be putting $50 million into a game and getting back, $32 million because the game flops or whatever.
He said there used to be a whole run-up, remembering how much time, energy, and money studios invested in distribution and publicity campaigns. He said the goal was to generate sustained excitement and enthusiasm for new movies. He says, quote, "That's finished. I used to be in the movie business where you made something really because you cared about it," he said. And he says the way companies measure success now is also different. During his tenure at Paramount in the 70s and 80s, the studio released movies like Saturday Night Fever. Since then, he's been known for his work in television. He helped create the Fox TV network. Today, streaming is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and competition among companies for content and customers is fierce. He pointed to Prime Video, Amazon's streaming service, as an example of how incentives in the entertainment business have changed. In May, Amazon, I didn't hear this, They announced plans to buy MGM for $8.5 billion. So Amazon is gobbling up old movie companies now.
Yeah.
They have the money to. The only thing I
Amazing.
like about Amazon is that they do have just any movie you want to see, you'll be able to find on Amazon, but it's not included in your Amazon Prime subscription. You're going to have to rent it for $2.99 or $3.99 or whatever. And
But
that,
they give a lot away in the Amazon Prime subscription too, though.
not any of the movies I've been trying to watch.
Of course not. Because they rope you in with the free stuff, the lower quality stuff. They go like, well, if you want to watch this good movie, it's $2.
Yeah, but see, that's kind of
But
the
it's only
issue.
$2.
But is he right about this, or is he just a grumpy old guy mad about change? Because I've seen these
No, it's both.
Amazons have bought old licenses and brought stuff back that people wanted to see again.
He's both. He's right. It's not going anywhere, but he's upset because he's a grumpy old guy.
What do you think? 603-283-6160.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
Your amp will directly change more lives by getting Free Talk Live in front of people looking for talk radio online and on the air. When you amp Free Talk Live, you get perks like access to the AMP-only Facebook group and AMP podcast. Visit amp.freetalklive.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talking about movies here, and what one guy is characterizing as the death of the movie industry. But as we, as we've alluded to and as we discussed during the break, it's not really dying. It's just going to have to evolve to adapt to the new climate in which it finds itself.
Like any other industry going through some sort of change because of changing demand of the market.
Yeah, and this guy is, he's really old. So things were done a very certain way during his tenure in Paramount and Fox Pictures back in the 70s and 80s.
Back in my day, they were all under contract and they had to make the movies we told them to.
It's a little later than that, but this guy is really old. He probably was alive during that time. But, is he right about this? I think, the movie business as we knew it is changed forever. But is it a bad thing necessarily?
Only time will tell. I mean, and it's going to be subjective to the individual. I'm not going to miss the theater experience. Now, maybe it means movies are made with a little bit smaller budget or whatever, but that's fine. I don't have to.
You can do a lot more with less today than you could in the past. I mean,
that's also true.
Even small budget productions can look surprisingly good. Like, for instance, in the past, before 10 or 15 years ago, TV shows were obviously different from movies. They looked lower budget. They looked cheap.
Yeah.
And now TV shows are almost on the same tier as far as quality of, computer graphics and things like that.
Because that's where people are watching all these things now, right? The TV quality has gotten better.
It's still surprisingly expensive to make a movie, though. Like, even one of these low-budget things, like, I've watched some really low-budget movies, like Velocipaster, I think, had a...
Oh, my God. I see that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not good. I mean, it's entertaining, but... I mean,
the Velocipaster is literally like a blow-up costume with T-Rex on.
It was styrofoam.
Okay.
It was a big, blocky-headed Velociraptor made out of styrofoam. Now, you could tell the total budget of this movie was like maybe $2,000 or $3,000.
Wow!
But I mean, it was still entertaining. And here is someone else who's seen it. So successful. Amazing. But let's go to the phones. Before we get further into that, we got Vernon calling from New Orleans. Vernon, you're on Free Talk Live.
Good evening, gentlemen. I have a comment, and I'm certainly not trolling. I really do want to hear your legitimate opinions on my comment, and I will hang up and listen off the air. So last segment, I think Ian used the term, and I'm not quoting here because obviously I forgot. I think it was prescribed government servitude or something. Yet the two of you, I think, have served the government far greater than anyone that I know in the past few months since the raid. And honestly, I'm just being honest with you, and then I'll hang up.
Don't hang up.
I feel like the raid has turned you all into hypocrites. I really do.
Hold on.
What are you talking about?
Can you
don't hang
elaborate?
up because there needs some clarification.
Yeah, you all have the government telling you exactly which websites you can and can't go to. You can't even leave the house without asking the government. You can't do anything without asking the government. You have something shackled to your knee in from the government, and yet you sit here and rail against them every single day on your radio show.
Isn't that
what am I supposed to
rail
do?
Against them?
Yeah, what am I supposed to do? Fillet them because they're controlling me?
Well, I have no idea, but I think it's contradictory for you to not try to do anything.
Have you ever been on bail conditions, Vernon?
Ian and I have both put in motions to change our bail conditions so that we could do the show here together. It's not like we're just sitting back relaxing.
What do you think? Are you suggesting that we should just go out and violate the bail conditions openly so they can throw us back in a cage?
No, there are alternatives.
What's that?
Why not go to a country that doesn't have extradition treaties or something like that? I mean, if you all are that passionate about your belief in the evils of the government, why do you bow down to them on these bail conditions? I'm not understanding that.
Because there are guns to our heads.
Oh, but he's saying you can run. You can run. You can escape.
Why would I
You
want
can't escape the tendrils of the American government,
why
first
would
of all.
why would I want to go on the run for the rest of my life and try to avoid the American gang who then would want to throw me into prison for even longer
Principles, Ian.
than they want to
Principles.
throw me into, when ultimately I think we have a pretty good case, and we knew these charges were likely to be brought. I don't think we expected them to be quite as intense as they were, but I didn't
expect the level of violence that we saw.
But I mean, so that's what your answer is that
You could have stayed in jail like nobody.
Nobody mistakenly stayed in jail, dude. He wants to be out.
He's trying to get out. I mean, he's not in there on principle or anything like that.
You think it's a good old time to be hanging out in jail?
No, but at least
have you ever been to jail?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, then what are you talking about as though you know anything about like bail conditions and what things are like out here, calling us hypocrites? Ridiculous.
I'm simply pointing out what I think is the hypocrisy or the hypocrisy that you two are continuing to show on the radio. That's my own opinion.
It's not hypocrisy when you got a gun to your head.
I don't think it's hypocritical. I don't think it's hypocrisy either way, because if the government has a gun to your head and they're forcing you to do these things and you're saying, like, we should put an end to government because this is terrible, that seems like the appropriate response. Right? Yeah. They're being evil and you want to put an end to that.
One of my favorite things I saw recently was after they amended the bail conditions that allowed us to, do the show together, we were right back into it. It was like advocating for New Hampshire secession and drumming up support for that to get the federal government out of the state of New Hampshire. I mean,
Vernon would rather have us violate the bail conditions openly. And
then what happens to Free Talk Live? Free Talk Live just dies.
Yeah. I think he wants that to happen.
From Honduras, man.
I think that's what he wants to happen.
Vernon, thank you so much for the call tonight. He's
always been a little bitch to the state.
Is that so?
Yeah, he's always been a fan of the state. He's always been a critic of Free Talk Live.
I've always been against running from one's problems. And that would include problems.
They catch up to you.
Yeah. And that would be the case here. Okay, somebody wants to run, not me because I'm not a runner, but we've seen this countless times. People try to escape the long arms of the American federal government, which realistically has no jurisdiction. You say a country with non-extradition. Look, if they want you bad enough, they're going to get you. And even if they somehow don't just invade the sovereignty of this other nation, you're locked into that one place for the rest of your life.
That's right.
Yeah. Edward Snowden is kind of stuck. Julian Assange was stuck for a long time.
He's still in jail.
Well, because they got him. Right?
Yeah. But I mean, before then, he was effectively stuck
inside the Ecuadorian embassy for 6 years.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what I'm saying.
Basically
stuck there,
in jail, yeah.
Basically, but not by the state that was going after him, right? Like he was effectively jailed by being a citizen of Ecuador.
To me, that doesn't sound any better than, just being in jail awaiting extradition to the United States or whatever. You're locked down here basically in prison, or you're actually in prison, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Maybe in one you have a little bit more freedom, or in the other you have a little bit more freedom. But either way, running is not going to help any of it.
Yeah, and obviously, he was acting as though nobody had made some sort of brave decision to stay in jail or some kind of principled decision to stay in jail.
It seemed that way in the beginning.
That wasn't at all what he was doing, though. His attorney had given him bad advice, and we're still not sure why he was told to stay, to not request the bail hearing. But he went along with what his attorney said and realized he shouldn't have done that, and has been trying to correct that ever since.
Yeah, everything that has happened since nobody took that advice is a direct result of the attorney giving him that bad advice.
Yeah, and he was, of course, the public defender, and they aren't always the best at doing things, generally. But, when you get put into one of these cells, it's not like I couldn't have sat in jail. I mean, it's the Merrimack County Spiritual Retreat. I had plenty of time to read books. It wasn't, I wasn't being threatened by other inmates or anything like that. It wasn't the worst possible jail experience or anything. But there's more that I can do on the outside. And if we can beat these charges later, and we can, whether or not we do is another question. What's the jury going to be like? There's a lot of unanswered questions at this point. But if you do beat those charges later and you've sat in jail waiting the entire time, you just spent a whole year of your life behind bars only to quote unquote win. You don't get that time back.
One of the things I've been saying lately since all of this happened is that, freedom shouldn't be relative, but right now it kind of is.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Whether I like it or not, I have to view freedom as a relative thing, and I'm relatively freer out here where I can reach an audience and advocate for secession and scaling back the scope of the federal government versus sitting in a jail cell reading books and doing no activism.
It's absolutely relative, and again, that's why the Free State Project or the New Hampshire Freedom Migration exists.
Yeah, you make
'Cause
your
it's
stand.
relatively more free here than it is wherever you're at.
You make your stand when and where you can and where it's appropriate. And we're under circumstances where we're under frequent observation and active threat in a variety of different ways. So unfortunately, our ability to go out and, lead the charge of civil disobedience or whatever is not happening right now. That's, not on the options for us.
Yeah. I mean, well, it would be good if we could, but I don't want to spend the next 18 months or however before the trial in jail because, I did some cop blocking and the cop decided to arrest me for it. I mean, that's just
there goes your bail.
Yeah, that's just the reality of the situation, and it sucks. But I don't think it's hypocrisy to bow down when someone puts a gun to your head.
It'd be more hypocrisy. Damn.
Yeah. What do you think? Are we hypocrites? 603-283-6160.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave. The Taliban has made substantial territorial advances in 3 northern regional capitals just weeks before US troops are due to leave Afghanistan. They've also launched attacks on Lashkar-Gah in the south and Herat in the west. Dominic Nichols is Defence and Security Editor for the Telegraph newspaper in the UK, who served for 23 years in the British Army.
It sounds as if the Afghan government forces have got the upper hand now in Lashkar-Gah, but it's taken a huge effort. They had to fly in a load of commandos and relied on air power, both from the Afghan Air Force and the US. They've taken, over the last few days, up to sort of 10 to 15 airstrikes a day from the US and from the Afghan Air Force. And that's what it's required to retake that capital. So can they do that everywhere? Probably not.
US President Joe Biden has given no indication that he's reconsidering the drawdown. The US and UK have also advised their citizens to leave the country as the violence between the Taliban and Afghan forces gathers pace. Thousands of people have been evacuated from Greece's largest island, Evia, because of wildfires. Dozens have broken out across the country and have been burning for days. But Evia's is the worst, creating scenes that have been described as apocalyptic. It comes as Greece experienced its most intense heatwave in 3 decades, with temperatures reaching a blistering 45 degrees Celsius. Several countries have sent planes and firefighters to help fight the towering flames, with more support arriving arriving in the coming days. The causes of the blazes are being investigated. 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of starting fires, in 2 cases intentionally. Officials in Greece and Europe have also pointed to climate change following fires from the south of Italy to Turkey to Siberia in Russia. Greece's Prime Minister warned the country could face a nightmarish summer of forest fires. And the Tokyo 2020 Olympics are now officially over. After 16 days of competition in an unprecedented and controversial event amid the coronavirus pandemic, the United States took home the most gold medals with 39. John Matthews reports from Tokyo.
Well, the closing ceremonies naturally don't carry the same level of pomp and circumstance the opening ceremonies do. I think the human stories really stand out. The story of 2 high jumpers from Italy and Qatar, they're good friends and rivals for years. They chose to share their gold medals instead of going into a tiebreaker. The story of Simone Biles stepping away from final competitions because she wasn't in a headspace to do her best, and then coming back and medaling in her final event, showing she still had the goods. There have only been 409 cases confirmed among Games affiliates from July 1st until the closing ceremony. Now, that's less than 1% of all stakeholders, but people on the streets are telling us the Games going on despite the pandemic have encouraged them to take risks related to COVID.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. In just 3 months, the eyes of the world will be on Glasgow for the COP26 climate change conference that is due to be attended by scores of world leaders and will have huge influence, setting environmental goals for decades to come. But the man who will be heading the conference, British Cabinet Minister Alok Sharma, has been under fire in recent days for the amount of travel he's engaged in, paving the way for the conference. He's visited at least 30 countries since January, some of them on the UK government's red list, but he's been exempt from COVID-19 quarantine upon his return due to his ministerial status. He's defending his actions, and so is Tom Burke, the chair of climate change think tank E3G and a former government advisor.
The level of diplomacy that we've got to accomplish in order to get agreement that will be useful out of COP is enormous. And that relies fantastically on people trusting each other. And Alok's job is to go around all of the countries that are going to play an important part and make sure that we've heard what's their concern so that he's in a position to map out the sort of ground at which we can struggle for agreement in the end game of this.
In so many ways, the world of diplomacy has been hampered by COVID-19, and of course it remains to be seen precisely what impact the pandemic will yet have on the Glasgow meeting itself. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main headlines again. The Taliban has made substantial territorial advances in 3 northern regional capitals just weeks before US troops are due to leave Afghanistan. Thousands of people have been evacuated from Greece's largest island, Evia, because of wildfires. And the Tokyo 2020 Olympics are now officially over after 16 days of competition. And that is the latest from Feature Story News. I'm Jagruti Dave in Washington.
Buying a burger might start taking a bite out of your wallet. Meat prices skyrocketed this week after the place that makes the meat revealed that the cow smashing machine is all beefed up.
This machine has beef way up in it. The basher, the meat collector, even the main meat hole, all of it. Lousy with beef.
The cow smashing machine is an integral part of the meat making process, taking whole big cows into one end with all different meats falling out the other. Supermarket chains warn that unless we start smashing cows again soon, we could face a serious beef shortage. The beef industry is working hard to unclog the cow smasher, but says it could take several days or even weeks to scoop all the beef that's crammed up in there. Until it's fixed, meat-hungry Americans can take solace in the fact that the chicken grinder is working at full capacity, just completely tearing up all those chickens, and the pig machine is porking out hardcore. Up next, bluesmen find a rising trend of their babies done leaving on that their old devil train.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It's It's Free Talk Live with resident hypocrites Aria and Ian, and also Richie Rich tonight. You're welcome to join us. 603.
I love it when people give me activism advice who've never lifted a finger to do anything risky or do any civil disobedience whatsoever. I mean, I've been arrested more times than I can count now. I think it's at least 10.
I don't think it's bad.
I don't really know.
It's not bad to give suggestions or advice, but he was clearly just flat out wrong. What I was trying to say at the end of the segment was it's more hypocritical for you guys to have all these bail conditions and then to turn and be in favor of the state. Right?
Oh, yeah, we've never been in favor of the state.
Understood. That's why
I don't want these restrictions, but the restrictions I'm under are better than being in a jail cell.
Right.
Which is why I've been saying, freedom shouldn't be relative, but
it's
right
not,
now it is.
It's not being at liberty, which is the way
Right.
the judge actually described what should be one's status if one is not like an imminent threat, to other people. You're supposed to be, quote, at liberty prior to trial, and we are nowhere near that. It's not as delibertized as being in a jail cell, but it's close.
You and I have almost the opposite conditions, right? I mean, you can more or less browse as you want because
I can browse the internet.
Yeah, your stuff is
except
monitored
for crypto,
right?
Buying, selling, trading kind of sites.
Whereas I'm on a whitelist and have almost no access to the internet.
Right.
But presumably that's because they're not monitoring my stuff. I don't know, and it's just sort of on a trust system. But I had to get permission to use Nintendo Switch online and stuff like that.
Which I'm so glad you did.
But I can come and go as I want
Correct.
anywhere in the United States. Like next month, I'm going to Kentucky, but you are on house arrest. You have internet freedom, but no physical freedom, whereas I have.
And it's all totally arbitrary. Colleen, who is one of our co-defendants, the 60-plus-year-old grandmother, she, as I understand it, not that I've spoken with her, but I've heard these things, she is not even allowed to have a smartphone. She just put in a motion this week, actually on Friday. She filed a motion through her attorney to lessen her bail restrictions because they forced her to have a flip phone. This is the woman who has, almost no internet experience whatsoever. It's not like she's going to hack into some website through her smartphone, but they told her she has to have a flip phone and she can't drink at all because she admitted during her, interview with probation that she at one time went to rehab for alcoholism back in 15 years ago or something like that. So they told her, nope, you can't even have a glass of wine. So she's now
interesting.
Yeah.
That could probably be challenged as well. I know.
Well, she's trying to.
Okay.
But
I know
you
if
can drink.
Yes.
Yeah.
File another motion.
I mean, I could smoke pot if I wanted to. I don't want to, and I mean that's one of the reasons that it's not even marked off. It's because I don't enjoy pot. But yeah, I'm allowed to drink and do whatever drugs I want. Presumably, I mean there would be separate charges for me doing illegal drugs, but it's not technically a violation of the bail restrictions in and of itself. Usually it is.
Yeah,
so it's very
no
strange. But I mean, it's all up to, as I understand it, the supervisory officer about how they want to handle you. So it's all very weird and yes, arbitrary. But I seem to have gotten relatively lucky in that regard. At least I was allowed to have a smartphone pretty much as soon as I got released.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have tracking software on the phone, right?
Correct.
It's because you're not the criminal mastermind.
As far as I know. But anyway, I want to get into a story from Hawaii. You're actually from Hawaii, aren't you, Rich?
Let all those islands just fall into the ocean.
Not a fan?
Not a fan at all.
Is it because, why? I've always heard of it, characterized as a sort of tropical paradise.
Sure. Yeah. If you okay, so here's the thing. If you like the weather, fantastic. Not many places better than that for the weather and the warmth and the beaches.
Mm-hmm.
But just especially now during the whole COVID lockdown, I don't want to be there. I have no reason to be there.
I remember years ago we had a caller. This is before I knew you. Caller when we had a station I think we were on in Maui. We had a station
you were
there.
on in Maui.
And one of the callers said, "This is the flowered curtain down here," referencing the Iron Curtain, but there they call it the flowered curtain, which I'd never heard before. And it's it's this beautiful paradise, but under the, right underneath the surface is this horribly totalitarian, terrible government.
Yep.
And they've proven that now with COVID.
They absolutely proven it. But what I've said at the beginning of the lockdowns is if you really wanted to isolate the virus, right, then super totalitarianism is the way to go.
But it has to be absolute.
But it has to be absolute. And Hawaii is uniquely situated to have the capability of going that route and being absolute. And they started down that route, but then didn't make it absolute, right? Like, you still could come and go. You could still go between the islands and whatever.
See, it would have been a tremendous affront to personal freedom, but yes, I agree. We could have, in theory, stopped the virus by just locking everyone in their homes, whether they liked it or not.
I don't know if I believe that, because people who were in their homes were still getting infected. And look, remember, I don't know if you were on the show, but there was, it was a Saturday show, so I don't think you'd have been on. Captain Kickass had a story about a military lockdown test where the U.S. military had a facility with people that had volunteered or whatever to be on this program, and they were like to the maximum military lockdown, all following all protocols. Everything that comes, any kind of like food thing that would be brought in from the outside had to be sanitized with.
There's a problem right there. They're bringing in stuff from the outside.
Well, I'm just saying, they followed. You're not going to be able to grow all the food, right? Necessarily.
No, people would have been going hungry for those 3-week periods.
Yeah, so
we're talking absolute full level lockdown in order to have done this.
All of the things.
No imports, no exports.
They could have done to sanitize to the max, like every hour they're sanitizing the bathrooms. There's all kinds of protocols in place. Still, they had COVID come in.
But see, in the absolute lockdown, there wouldn't be food coming in. You would have to eat what was in your house, and when you ran out of that, you just went hungry until the end of it. Well, no, you would have survived 3 weeks for the most people.
Or again, in Hawaii,
I'm saying it would have been a tremendous affront to personal freedom.
In Hawaii, because of the island nature of the state, right? As long as you don't let anyone out or let anyone in, if you do that long enough, the virus will circulate within the borders, but will never escape. Because it's not like it's going to get on the next plane or the next boat out, right, and travel that way. And it's not going to survive the 3,000-mile trip to wherever else it needs to get, to land in other humans.
Well, Sweden is certainly no island, but that's sort of the approach that they took. But before that, I want to talk about Hawaii because it's one of the country's it has one of the country's most comprehensive mask mandates and a highly effective vaccine campaign. I didn't know anything about this. I tend to not pay much attention to Hawaii. Despite that, COVID-19 cases on the islands are climbing with a ferocity that's outstripping every other U.S. state.
Good.
Good. On Thursday, Hawaii recorded 655 new cases, a record since the beginning of the pandemic. Test positivity rates surged to the highest in a year at 6.9%.
They were so smug in the beginning, too. Look, we've got the lowest rates. It's because we locked down everything. No, it's not coming. We got the lowest hospitals, the lowest deaths. Look how great our percentages is when we steal all the freedoms away from people.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that now they have some of the highest vaccination rates and some of the most stringent lockdowns, and yet they have the highest number of cases in the United States. The situation testifies to the Delta variant's strength and ability to penetrate walls of protections, restrictions, and mandates.
By wall of protection, do you mean that little piece of paper you put over your face?
I think they mean mostly the vaccine.
Of protection? Oh, okay.
But just look how they refer to restrictions and mandates. The Delta variant's strength and ability to penetrate restrictions and mandates. Really? A government mandate can't stop a virus? Really? This is news to anyone?
We made it against the law to get the virus out. Right? We don't know what happened.
We told the virus it was breaking the law, and it just infected people anyway.
You should have printed the mandate and put that over your face. That would have stopped it.
Probably, yeah.
A cross with some holy water, perhaps, just right there.
Those vaccinated have been mostly spared severe infection and illness. For those who haven't, the risk is significant and growing. But that's pretty much it. Just 7-day average cases are up 107% in the last week, the steepest rise among the states, bringing lots of numbers in. It stands at about 194 per 100,000, which is roughly in line with the national average. But again, it's the steepest climb that we've seen. And, they have the third highest vaccination rate in the country.
It bears repeating that the vaccine doesn't stop the spread.
It clearly doesn't. 603-283-6160. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you want to join us. That's 603-283-6160. And Freedom's Phoenix is your source for all news, economic news, government overreach, insane government spending, and more. You can get today's headlines all in one place from a fresh libertarian perspective. You can find all of that and more at freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. Now, we were just talking about Hawaii, which is one of the most heavily vaccinated states in the U.S. It's number 3rd behind Massachusetts and Vermont, our neighbors here in New Hampshire, unfortunately.
The core of freedom is like here and that's it, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised by that, but I mean, Massachusetts and Vermont being what they are, I'm not surprised to find that they're the number one and number two states. But in other parts of the world, people have been playing it a little bit differently, like Sweden. They've been doing this differently from the very beginning. Initially, there was no lockdown whatsoever. I think they did lock down briefly, but it was a very scaled back one versus what even we here in New Hampshire saw, which was just basically bars and restaurants closed for, I think, a total of 3 weeks before they were open again.
Yeah, it wasn't very long here, and then the governor's order was weak.
It was weak. It allowed a whatever an individual deems to be essential exclusion to the stay-at-home order.
Yeah.
But you had to actually read it to know that that existed, because the media was acting like this was just every other lockdown out there.
Yeah, but I can imagine.
Yeah.
Look, the governor issues a stay-at-home order. Who doesn't read it? I mean, I realize that we're weird.
The average people will not read it.
But the mask mandates, they're all toothless. But they were like, oh, Governor Sununu has implemented a mask mandate, but he really didn't. Right. He implemented a mask recommendation, maybe, but it wasn't an order.
Even that, though, because New Hampshire, like if you look at the national media, New Hampshire was like up there for like one of the most locked down states, because the order had so much language in there that made it appear strong, but he left in like the free state exemption, right? Like if you have a medical exemption, you don't have to follow these orders, and no one can question you about your exemption.
Also, New Hampshire is the only state to actually be returning the fines to business owners. That there were about $10,000 in fines that were issued to 8 different business owners. So not a whole lot of crackdown, but
they should have never been fined in the first place.
They never should have been, but it's the only state to have authorized this. And by the way, Sununu doesn't get any credit for it because he spoke out against returning the fines. It's like, well, this is against law and order. But he basically had to sign the budget, and so therefore he had to do it.
I'm not giving him credit for that, but I will give him credit for building in that exemption that basically nullified any of the rest of the order.
If you bothered to read it.
If you bothered to read it, yeah.
But, he did, at the same time, he did put His Excellency Governor Sununu at the top.
Sure.
So, I mean, the man was on a power trip, but he also knew that he could only push so far in the state of New Hampshire before people got upset.
But every place I went in New Hampshire for, the vast majority of 2020 and until they lifted the order several months ago, they go, "Sir, mask." And I go, "Exemption." And then that was it. Like there was, they were not allowed to question that. I just went, "I have an exemption." And they went, "Right this way, sir."
Yep.
And the only reason I was allowed to do that, allegedly, was because it was built into the order.
Well, it has to be built into the order, as I understand it. There has to be a medical exemption in any of these things because there are legitimate medical reasons for people not to, cover their faces, which is going to be interesting when the mask mandates come back because all of the retail workers, all of the restaurant workers out there, all of the baristas at Starbucks, none of them want to see a return of the masks. And it's not necessarily because they want to be maskless. It's because they don't want to go back to having to deal with customers who don't want to wear masks. And, there's countless examples of this. I saw an article yesterday that was about this topic. I don't have it with me now, but they interviewed 10 different people from retail and, food workers, convenience stores, that kind of thing. And it's like, how do you feel about all this? And the decision was unanimous. We don't want this because we don't want to have to enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been the issue I've had with it, is that you can't turn your average gas station worker, your average fast food worker into law enforcement, and that's exactly what the mandates did.
Some of them loved it. I mean, some of these people were just itching to be able to tell you what to do, the little tyrants that never got to become a cop.
And those people were in Hawaii when I was there.
Well, they were here in New Hampshire as well. Yeah. I worked with some of them, and it was appalling to see how they would handle it. Like telling old men they would have to wait outside in the rain and stuff like that, yelling at children. And it's just, what is wrong with you? Where does your humanity go?
My regular job, aside, that I get paid for, is basically just me in the office, and people would come up to the office and be like, "Do I have to wear the mask?" I'm like, "You do whatever you want. Like, if you don't want to wear the mask, just come in here. We can talk. If you want to wear the mask, do whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you what to do. If you don't want to wear the mask, I am unconcerned."
And unfortunately, from everything I can see, the mask mandates are going to be back within maybe a month, maybe 2.
This Delta strain is scary. It's scary.
The Delta strain wasn't scary enough, so now there's the Delta Plus strain.
Really?
That they're peddling.
Disney Plusing this thing now?
They are, man. There is a Delta Plus strain of this now, and they're like, "Oh, we don't know."
Is this the Doomsday one?
I don't know. We never got into the actual strain that was supposed to be the doomsday strain, but let's
double plus Delta.
Yeah, let's just go all out and get this over with. Give us the deadliest, most infectious strain of this crap so we can just get it over with, please.
It's the Ebola strain.
That's all we ever had to do was let this thing run its course and get it over with.
But people will die while it's running its course.
People have died anyway.
One life is just too much.
Well, how about the 12,000 killed as a side effect of the vaccines then? If one is too many, what about the people who killed themselves because of the lockdowns?
It's for the greater good.
That's the argument, certainly.
That is the greater good.
But the greater good would have been to allow the virus to run its course so that, humanity developed an immunity to this novel coronavirus, as it has, done for the last 250,000 years. Every time a new virus originated, it ran its course and humanity, survived.
That's your greater good, but other people's greater goods might be different. Like the greater good for a politician means aggregating more power to themselves and being able to tax more and control more and get you to be more obedient. That feels good for them.
That's their own good, though.
Yes, that's right. You're describing what would be your greater good, and they have what's their greater good.
But only one person gets to choose. Yeah, only one person gets to choose the greater good for everybody, and they're in charge.
That's the issue I have with government in general.
Governor Sununu's greater good is the greater good for all of New Hampshire.
Except it's not. But I prefer the Sweden approach insofar as, what I know about it. I don't know everything about what Sweden actually did. However, I do know that for the last several weeks, I think the article is probably now 2 weeks old or something like that. But at one time they were reporting no new cases. Here's this Delta strain that's just allegedly, if you believe the media, is just wrecking the world. I don't see it.
Well, they're saying there's no deaths or hovering around 0 COVID deaths per day. This is a story from RT where Sweden's chief epidemiologist is arguing more data is needed about the strain, meaning the Delta strain's infectiousness. Sweden right now is mask-free. Anders Tegnell said recently there was a lot we don't know about Delta and cautioned against drawing far-reaching conclusions about the coronavirus strain. Imagine that, a chief medical officer who's saying, hey, we should be cautious before we make any kinds of crazy decisions.
Well, the thing with Sweden, too, is their numbers went up and down like every place else, even though they were on a different track. So every time their numbers went up, it was like, because they're not masked and because they're not locking down.
I think Tom Woods did an extensive video on this covering masked areas versus non-masked areas.
And you couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, there was no difference.
Right.
But we're going to get more into Sweden. 603-283-6160. More coming up here on Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live's video archives have been on Library for years. Library is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, Library launched Odyssey, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave. The Taliban has made substantial territorial advances in 3 northern regional capitals just weeks before US troops are due to leave Afghanistan. They've also launched attacks on Lashkar-Gah in the south and Herat in the west. Dominic Nichols is Defence and Security Editor for the Telegraph newspaper in the UK, who served for 23 years in the British Army.
It sounds as if the Afghan government forces have got the upper hand now in Lashkar-Gah, but it's taken a huge effort. They had to fly in a load of commandos and relied on air power, both from the Afghan Air Force and the US. They've taken, over the last few days, up to sort of 10 to 15 airstrikes a day from the US and from the Afghan Air Force. And that's what it's required to retake that capital. So can they do that everywhere? Probably not.
US President Joe Biden has given no indication that he's reconsidering the drawdown. The US and UK have also advised their citizens to leave the country as the violence between the Taliban and Afghan forces gathers pace. Thousands of people have been evacuated from Greece's largest island, Evia, because of wildfires. Dozens have broken out across the country and have been burning for days. But Evia's is the worst, creating scenes that have been described as apocalyptic. It comes as Greece experienced its most intense heatwave in 3 decades, with temperatures reaching a blistering 45 degrees Celsius. Several countries have sent planes and firefighters to help fight the towering flames, with more support arriving in the coming days. The causes of the blazes are being investigated. 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of starting fires, in 2 cases intentionally. Officials in Greece and Europe have also pointed to climate change following fires from the south of Italy to Turkey to Siberia in Russia. Greece's Prime Minister warned the country could face a nightmarish summer of forest fires. And the Tokyo 2020 Olympics are now officially over. After 16 days of competition in an unprecedented and controversial event amid the coronavirus pandemic, the United States took home the most gold medals with 39. John Matthews reports from Tokyo.
Well, the closing ceremonies naturally don't carry the same level of pomp and circumstance the opening ceremonies do. I think the human stories really stand out. The story of 2 high jumpers from Italy and Qatar, they're good friends and rivals for years. They chose to share their gold medals instead of going into a tiebreaker. The story of Simone Biles stepping away from final competitions because she wasn't in a headspace to do her best, and then coming back and medaling in her final event, showing she still had the goods. There have only been 409 cases confirmed among Games affiliates from July 1st until the closing ceremony. Now, that's less than 1% of all stakeholders, but people on the streets are telling us the games going on despite the pandemic have encouraged them to take risks related to COVID.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. If you want to join us, that's 603-283-6160. And I want to tell you about Bitcoin.com. It is the best place to go to learn about cryptocurrency. If you're new to it, just click Getting Started at the top of the page. There's a number of short videos there. It'll just take a couple of minutes of your time to teach you the basics of this world-changing, life-changing technology. But if you already know the basics of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin.com still has something for you. You can find all the news and headlines that's relevant to you at news.bitcoin.com, all on a sleek and easy-to-use modern website. Again, that's Bitcoin.com, the best place to go for cryptocurrency, just in general. But let's go to the phones. We got Harrison listening on WGOW in Chattanooga. Harrison, you're on Free Talk Live.
Good evening, folks.
Hey, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, it may have the liberty to back up a few breaks ago when you all were talking about being in jail.
Yes.
The best I can come up with is a message sent. And I have been scratching my head trying to figure out why the law and all the law came in and busted you in the way that they did, the way it was carried out, and all I can think of is just to send a message. I was going to see what you all thought about that, if they told y'all why they handled it the way they did, or...
No, they don't speak about those sorts of things, I suspect.
Because they victimized little old ladies who were just trying to buy some Bitcoin and got scammed. And for that...
It's really unclear, right? No matter how one looks at the federal indictment, which is publicly available for anyone who wants to see it, there is nothing in there that suggests any amount of violence from any of these 6 people involved. And I don't know how it was everywhere else. I know I have a general idea of what it was like here, but it was a war zone here from what I've heard. And it wasn't nearly that bad.
Warzone would suggest that there was actually a war being fought, which would mean that the other side was fighting back, and no one fired a shot. There was no, standoff with any weapons or anything like that. They were not in danger at any moment during their raid.
Yeah, but nothing in the indictment suggests any sort of violence on any of the people involved. I mean, Certainly not me, but they still held me at gunpoint, and it's unclear why they did any of that instead of just showing up and knocking on the door and being like, "Hey, yeah, we have this warrant here."
Now, if you ask Mark, he would suggest that all of that was a scare tactic because the more important thing that they're going after is getting Free Talk Live, this radio program, off the air.
Well, they failed at that. So if that was the message they were attempting to send, the message failed.
Well, that's exactly what I'm getting at, and Aria, you might have hit on it. When they take us out like that around here, in other words, big actions, big force, Bearcat, busting doors down and such. Usually, it's me and a biker gang, outlaw biker gang, or I'm gang banging or something like that, and you folks don't strike me like that, and it just seems kind of strange to me for them to come in and treat you that way. So all I could figure out was they must be trying to send the message.
That's a possibility. It's also possible that they are just scared generally. I mean, they're frightened of what could happen to them. And if you do wake somebody up at 6 in the morning by smashing in their windows and making a huge clatter, there is a greater chance that someone might respond in a potentially violent manner. Like
I would say that would be justified.
But that's just creating the situation
That's
in which
right.
that's that sort of thing. If you show up at someone's door at a reasonable hour and knock, and you're the FBI, and you're like, "Hey, we have this warrant," there's almost no chance of it leading to any sort of violence whatsoever.
Are you Ian Freeman? You have been served.
Right.
Like, that's it.
I leave my house multiple times every single day,
Harrison, thank you so much for the call tonight.
They could have come to like Social Sundays and rounded us all up in one fell swoop.
I don't know what the reason behind it was.
Chilling effect. It was.
It's
I
sending
agree.
a message.
It's
It didn't
definitely
work.
sending
I mean, I'll admit that the night of my release, I was relatively okay, but it was the next night where I was like legitimately terrified, traumatized. I would even use that word. Just terrified that it was going to happen again. That lasted all of a day.
Maybe for you, but how many people would convert, would do activism, would go to protests, and now don't want to because they don't want that to happen to them?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those
you
people
can't
are
measure it, but they're there.
Look, if you're going to get into activism and if you plan on actually having an effect, because if you're just running a libertarian campaign anywhere in the country, no one cares. It doesn't matter. You're never going to win. But if you actually do, migrate to this place, you gather together with a significant number of people who actually, are having an effect, who actually are, having an effect on the status quo, and that's going to make them scared of losing the status quo, and so they are likely to violently lash out at those people to teach you a lesson that you can't just try to change things without being pushed back against.
Well, the whole point of libertarian activism is to use words, to use the ideas of liberty to basically fight the state in the arena of public opinion. Anyone who is effective in that is going to have the state come down on them.
Yes. Unfortunately, I mean,
that's just how.
And the state is going to come out violently with tanks at 6 o'clock in the morning through your window.
Because they can.
Right. And all I'm saying is, how many people want to sign up for that?
They don't have to, right? They just have to see that it happened and go, you know what? Maybe those libertarians have a point. Maybe the federal government has gotten too big if that's how they respond to peaceful activism.
Well, and that's how I used to pitch it when I used to have these discussions with like non-libertarians. They go like, well, they'll just come down and nuke you. I go, well,
yes, that's the problem.
Yeah. And I go like, is that really the government like you're advocating for? Like that's really what you want out of your government? Like you're okay living under that system?
Didn't Biden recently say something about nuking American citizens?
He absolutely did.
I mean, I never saw that clip, so I don't know exactly what he said.
It was basically an anti-gun thing, right? Like we want to keep our AR-15s because you fight the government with those. Like, we got like nukes and F-15s. Like you have no chance against a government with like planes and nukes.
Well, he's not wrong. I mean, the government has drones and flying drones and robotic drones on the ground.
Right. So just turn in your guns. You don't stand a chance.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the farmers in Vietnam stood a chance.
That would be the counterpoint.
But a lot of that was because the U.S. government it's been fighting these wars with one hand tied behind its back. These are just sparring matches. Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan, they're just sparring matches for the U.S. government. They wanted to actually win these wars. They could easily do it in just a few hours. Just drop a bunch of nukes. right? But they don't want to actually win the war. They're just keeping the military prepared for the inevitable World War III, with one of the other two major superpowers.
And that's part of it, because the backlash from just nuking all of Afghanistan, right, would probably be severe from those two other major powers.
Yes.
It's like, now you go like, oh, okay, you're going to do this again. Now you really need to be stopped.
Look, if you're going to go up against the federal government, which is the largest, most invasive, one of the most violent governments on the planet, then you should expect some pushback. You should expect that if they feel threatened by your efforts, even though you're completely peaceful, that they're going to cook up false charges. They're going to put in, informants in your midst. They're going to do all kinds of underhanded, dirty tactics to try to make you look bad and possibly put you in a prison cell for the rest of your life. If not, just, set your house on fire and murder you. So I'm grateful they didn't set the house on fire.
I'm grateful my cats did not get hurt, certainly. I mean, apparently they left the doors open, but my cats, they were terrified by the experience, so they were just hiding somewhere when I got home. Eventually they came out, but I mean, it could have been a lot worse.
And if we're talking about comparative freedom, you're much more free not doing any of that and just living your life under the little bit of pressure of the state.
But it's getting worse.
You're right, but you're not getting snuffed out yet.
Yeah, but are you going to be able to tell your kids you did nothing?
No.
When the time comes?
I'm not saying. I'm just suggesting that is a perception that could be had if you go like, if you fight the state, you're going to end up in jail. And you go, well, I'll just take the limited freedom that I have then and not be in jail.
I mean, I guess that's a valid approach for cowards.
Sure.
But I'm not a coward, and I don't intend to play one. So my approach is, do what I can to wither the state so that we can actually be free.
Right.
To have absolute freedom, to have actual liberty instead of relative freedom, which is what we have now and which is what I'm enjoying now instead of being in jail where I would be significantly less free.
Right, you're doing what you can. That doesn't mean you have to jump on a grenade like the last caller a few callers ago was suggesting.
Excellent way to put it. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up about Sweden. It's Free Talk Live.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with AgristHosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to AgristHosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's AgristHosting.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and I want you to imagine a world where a public health official says, there's a lot we don't know about this Delta strain, so let's not make any rash decisions.
Sounds like a weak European country to me. This is America.
It sounds like some bizarre fan fiction that someone wrote a long time ago about how great the government could be if only it was wise and considerate and, all of the things that people believe government to be.
Sounds like a status ideal of what government is, because a lot of what I hear from those people is, well, the government has these intentions.
Right.
And it's just done poorly.
I can't even imagine what it must be like living in Sweden, where you have a public health official, from what I understand, the head of the health, whatever it is they have there, saying, oh, look, and let's everyone relax. We don't really know what's going on here. Let's wait and see. Let's gather some information first before we make a decision. Like, let's just lock down the entire country.
No, the uncertainty of that would just leads to public chaos.
And we
no
saw
one knows
that.
What's going on?
We've seen that repeatedly during presidential elections, where the worst thing any of these presidential candidates can do is admit that they don't know something. It doesn't matter if their answer is 100% wrong or if the answer they give has absolutely nothing to do with the question. God forbid one of them stand there and say, what is Aleppo? Because the public just cannot handle. It's like, how did he not know what Aleppo is? Well,
they didn't know either.
No, they didn't know either. But they're like, well, he's running for office. Donald Trump didn't know what Aleppo was either. Neither did Joe Biden. Gary Johnson was the one who asked that. And instead of, pontificating for, 4.5 minutes about the drug war or whatever one of the other politicians would have said, Gary Johnson gave an honest answer, which was basically, I don't know.
You mean you're going to be in charge of foreign policy and you don't know this city?
Yeah, and you don't know every little thing. But they don't realistically expect people to know every little thing. They just want you to allow them to operate under the delusion that you do. You can't just say, I don't know. You have to just spin off an answer that has nothing to do with the question.
Because the vast majority of the public values certainty over honesty.
Yes. But that
even if it's a lie.
Even if because they know that it's a lie. We
know there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
Yes. But that doesn't appear to be the case in Sweden, where their latest health official is saying, look, let's step back. Now, they don't have mask mandates in Sweden.
Nope.
They didn't really lock down to any significant degree.
They're all going to be dead in 2 weeks, and it's not going to matter then. Sweden, just erase it from the map.
Well, their COVID deaths, they were at 0 per day. I don't know what they're at now. I don't know how old this article is.
This story is from RT, published July 31st.
Okay, so it's about a week old at this point. A week ago, I think that's about when they hit the 0 deaths per day milestone.
This is an interview regarding Anders Tegnell, who is the chief epidemiologist. He noted that the Delta variant has been circulating in Sweden for quite some time, with little effect, particularly in high-risk settings such as nursing homes.
So now it's the Swedish flu.
His comments were
But it's been having no effect in Sweden.
Right, and maybe, I'm just going to speculate here, maybe that's because they never really had much of a mask requirement or lockdown, and so therefore people have a natural immunity that got built up, which from my understanding is should make you more immune, even though the government goons are saying that's not true with COVID. If you've got a natural immunity.
If it's true of the vaccine, then it's going to be true of the natural immunity.
Well, and without the mask mandate and the lockdowns, you're talking about a culture of people that had the ability to go outside, get fresh air, and exercise on a regular basis.
Also
so
true.
They're healthier.
So
probably.
They should be generally healthier based on that alone.
His comments were made in response to data from the CDC suggesting the Delta strain is more transmissible and could potentially cause more severe illness. The New York Times and other media outlets ran stories reporting the CDC now believes the Delta variant is contagious as chickenpox. But the comparison didn't seem to impress Tegnell. He said, quote, "It's difficult to say how contagious Delta is, as when it comes to chickenpox, we've been able to follow the disease for several years. The infectivity of Delta seems to be very uneven. In some cases, one person infects 100 people. Then we have other occasions when an infected person doesn't infect anyone at all," unquote. In separate marks, he pointed to the fact that 1/3 of the country's municipalities reported 0 new COVID cases. So not just deaths, but 0 cases over the past week. But at the same time, there was
0 cases throughout the entire week.
Yeah,
that is a success story if I have ever heard one.
That's 1/3 of the municipalities.
I'm going to put on my conspiracy hat for a moment and say, like, are those government numbers? And don't
Yes, they're municipalities.
Don't they have an incentive to report that anyway?
Fair point.
Like, look how good we're doing.
At the same
0.
time, there was an uptick in cases among young people in Stockholm and other larger cities. While U.S. health authorities are pressing Americans in high transmission areas to mask up, Sweden dropped its last remaining mask recommendation relating to public transport on July 1st. While their public health agency has supported measures such as social distancing and remote working, it has no recommendations for the use of face coverings in public spaces.
So it sounds like within a month of dropping all of their remaining recommendations, they were reporting no new cases in 1/3 of their municipalities, or whatever word you used, and no new deaths, at least as of a few weeks ago.
There's a few more numbers here of interest. Reviled by the media for refusing to impose harsh lockdowns, Sweden's less draconian approach to the health crisis appears to be paying off. The Scandinavian nation has recorded a total of 8 COVID-linked deaths so far this month. That's for the month of July, so like the entire month, basically, of July.
Before we get too deeply into the numbers, let's talk about that Sweden was reviled by the media for not having a harsher lockdown.
Of course.
Wouldn't you expect the media in a free society to just observe what was happening and then,
rather than have an opinion about it?
Yes, and say, hey, look.
In a free society, yes.
This seems to be working better in Sweden than it is in the United Kingdom. Maybe your government should follow Sweden's role instead of criticizing Sweden and condemning them and saying, oh, look, they're doing such a terrible job.
That's what an independent journalist would do. They would try to stay neutral in representing a particular story, but the news media is owned top, to bottom, lock, stock, and barrel by people who are completely obedient to the authoritarian state and arguably are working hand in hand to, help it rise.
Which, again, much like the Alex Jones topic from earlier, it's important to separate the facts from, like, the media commentary, right? Because the facts are whatever the numbers are being reported, right? The commentary is, look how terrible this is for whatever reason they're giving.
Well, I mean, this data has been available going back at least several months. I don't remember how long ago it was, but I remember discussing a story where it outright compared 5 counties in California to 5 counties in Florida, their COVID-19 rates, their death rates, and the numbers were almost level. California's were a little bit worse in every regard. I mean, more cases, more deaths, more hospitalizations. But the way the two states handled these things could not have been more dissimilar. Where Florida was relatively free and open, and California was among the strictest lockdowns in the United States.
And from the beginning, I've always said, like, since that is the case, and even if it wasn't the case, err in the favor of freedom.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Let people make their own decisions. That way, if they get sick, you made that choice. Like, you knew what you were getting into, and if the statistics bear out that it had no effect, well, then they didn't lock down and destroy an economy unnecessarily for some fear of something bad happening.
Daily hospitalizations have also hovered near zero in the month of July. On most days during July, the country saw between 0 and 2 COVID cases requiring hospital treatment. At the same time,
that's throughout the entire country
of Sweden. Mm-hmm. At the same time, daily cases have fallen sharply since April. So that's your story.
Well, kudos to Sweden for that. I really wish the United States had taken that sensible, rational approach to what was basically just a cold.
10 million, by the way. 10 million is the population of Sweden.
I was wondering that as well. Yeah. Thanks. And what state is that comparable to? Do you know off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head.
Off the top of my head, no. Yeah. But New Hampshire has 1.4 million.
Okay, so it's significantly bigger than New Hampshire, at least. New Hampshire, I would have guessed about 10 million for New Hampshire, but I don't know. So
way off.
Well, I don't know, man. 1 million people, 10 million people, realistically, I mean, what's the difference?
Yeah. Massachusetts, 7 million.
Okay, so it's a decent-sized country, at the very least. And a success story that the rest of the world should be following. But meanwhile, you're not hearing about it because the media is too busy bending over backwards to condemn them for how they handled it.
How dare you not do everything that every other country did, because now you are different and you're getting better results, and that makes us all look like we've been lying.
And the moment they have a death or two, it will be blamed on this policy.
Yeah, but look at what's happening in the United States with Hawaii, as we were just talking about, with its high vaccination rates and its strict mask mandates, and it's the highest rates of COVID-19 transmission in the United States.
Media controls public opinion. They will spin it however they want, and people will feed into it.
Eventually, I would like people to just get past that, and as you said, just look at the actual facts. But I don't know how far we are from that. How far away do you think it is before people actually wake up and take a look at the data? It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone? You forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection. You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave. The Taliban has made substantial territorial advances in 3 northern regional capitals just weeks before US troops are due to leave Afghanistan. They've also launched attacks on Lashkar-Gah in the south and Herat in the west. Dominic Nichols is defence and security editor for the Telegraph newspaper in the UK, who served for 23 years in the British Army.
It sounds as if the Afghan government forces have got the upper hand now in Lashkar-Gah, but it's taken a huge effort. They had to fly in a load of commandos and relied on air power, both from the Afghan Air Force and the US. They've taken, over the last few days, up to sort of 10 to 15 airstrikes a day from the US and from the Afghan Air Force. And that's what it's required to retake that capital. So can they do that everywhere? Probably not.
US President Joe Biden has given no indication that he's reconsidering the drawdown. The US and UK have also advised their citizens to leave the country as the violence between the Taliban and Afghan forces gathers pace. Thousands of people have been evacuated from Greece's largest island, Evia, because of wildfires. Dozens have broken out across the country and have been burning for days. But Evia's is the worst, creating scenes that have been described as apocalyptic. It comes as Greece experienced its most intense heatwave in 3 decades, with temperatures reaching a blistering 45 degrees Celsius. Several countries have sent planes and firefighters to help fight the towering flames, with more support arriving in the coming days. The causes of the blazes are being investigated. 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of starting fires, in 2 cases intentionally. Officials in Greece and Europe have also pointed to climate change following fires from the south of Italy to Turkey to Siberia in Russia. Greece's Prime Minister warned the country could face a nightmarish summer of forest fires. And the Tokyo 2020 Olympics are now officially over. After 16 days of competition in an unprecedented and controversial event amid the coronavirus pandemic, the United States took home the most gold medals with 39. John Matthews reports from Tokyo.
Well, the closing ceremonies naturally don't carry the same level of pomp and circumstance the opening ceremonies do. I think the human stories really stand out. The story of 2 high jumpers from Italy and Qatar, they're good friends and rivals for years. They chose to share their gold medals instead of going into a tiebreaker. The story of Simone Biles stepping away from final competitions because she wasn't in a headspace to do her best, and then coming back and medaling in her final event, showing she still had the goods. There have only been 409 cases confirmed among Games affiliates from July 1st until the closing ceremony. Now, that's less than 1% of all stakeholders, but people on the streets are telling us the Games going on despite the pandemic have encouraged them to take risks related to COVID.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. In just 3 months, the eyes of the world will be on Glasgow for the COP26 climate change conference that is due to be attended by scores of world leaders and will have huge influence, setting environmental goals for decades to come. But the man who will be heading the conference, British Cabinet Minister Alok Sharma, has been under fire in recent days for the amount of travel he's engaged in, paving the way for the conference. He's visited at least 30 countries since January, some of them on the UK government's red list, but he's been exempt from COVID-19 quarantine upon his return due to his ministerial status. He's defending his actions, and so is Tom Burke, the chair of climate change think tank E3G and a former government advisor.
The level of diplomacy that we've got to accomplish in order to get agreement that will be useful out of COP is enormous. And that relies fantastically on people trusting each other. And Alok's job is to go around all of the countries that are going to play an important part and make sure that we've heard what's their concern so that he's in a position to map out the sort of ground at which we can struggle for agreement in the end game of this.
In so many ways, the world of diplomacy has been hampered by COVID-19, and of course it remains to be seen precisely what impact the pandemic will yet have on the Glasgow meeting itself. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main headlines again. The Taliban has made substantial territorial advances in 3 northern regional capitals just weeks before US troops are due to leave Afghanistan. Thousands of people have been evacuated from Greece's largest island, Evia, because of wildfires. And the Tokyo 2020 Olympics are now officially over after 16 days of competition. And that is the latest from Feature Story News. I'm Jagruti Dave in Washington.
This is the Onion Week in Review. A report by Stanford University researchers released Thursday found that Americans spend 90% of their waking hours staring at glowing rectangles. Researchers identified more than 30 varieties of iridescent rectangles, ranging from personal and work rectangles to rectangles that heat food and those that can fit right in one's pocket.
From the moment Americans wake up, they are captivated by these bright, pulsing rectangles. In fact, if you look at the data, it's hard to find a single minute when the public isn't captivated by these, I'm sorry, where were we?
In local news, a run-over squirrel is remembered as frantic and indecisive. And in other news, a trail of rose petals leads a wife to a sink full of dishes. Prince Fielder reports to spring training exactly the right amount overweight, and a local yard sale reeks of divorce. If you don't hear the sound of my voice the same time next week, alert my family and then visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and I don't know about you, but I just don't see it happening. I don't think there is this secret conspiracy for Donald Trump to be made president on August the 16th or August the 30th or whatever date it is that...
He's going to be reinstated any moment now. It's 8D chess.
I mean, some people legitimately go on believing this, and I want to hear from you. If you're one of these people, let me know. I want to view the world through your lens as much as possible.
So
603-283-6160. If you're one of these people who believes that Donald Trump any day now is going to be, subject to a secret inauguration or whatever, let me know. What is going on in your head?
Several months ago, I had a conversation with one of these people at one of the community events in around town, and I prefaced it by saying, like, I will never believe this, right? But I'm fascinated by these theories. He goes, "Oh, bro, it's not a theory." I'm like, "Oh, great, you're one of them. Please tell me more." And he did. And I have not seen him at a subsequent event since then. I don't know.
That's where I'm at. I will never believe any of it, right? But I do want to know what do they believe and why do they believe it?
Well, see, the My Pillow guy said so.
I watched half of that documentary. Again, compelling evidence.
There's a documentary on the My Pillow guy?
It's the My Pillow guy's documentary, like where he proves that the election was falsified and stolen. It got kicked off of YouTube, so it's like on Rumble or whatever. So
then I can't watch it.
Okay, well, it's 2
unless
hours.
someone sends me, the full video through email or something like that. I can't watch it.
That's prohibitive. Watch it later then. But either way, it's a 2-hour documentary. I got halfway through it before I gave up.
I like your optimism. Watch it later.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But
it's not going anywhere.
Republicans are stoking QAnon conspiracy fires, and we're all paying for it, according to MSNBC, who, despite the fact that we have a Democratic president, just can't seem to stop talking about anything except the Democratic president.
Because he's a moron.
But it still remains true to this day. If you go to MSNBC.com, just looking for news, there's almost nothing here about the current actual sitting president of the United States. It's just QAnon, Republicans, racism, Andrew Cuomo, nothing about Biden. Oh, well, here's something about Biden. Why Biden will be unfairly blamed for a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. One mention of Biden from what I can tell. So,
he's a pretty dull man at this point. He's advanced cognitive decline.
Yes, but that's what makes him so fun. Right? We were just listening to him talk about stacking soup cans. He didn't even have the lucidity to say the word cans. He was just talking about stacking soup.
Okay.
Which makes me think about, just some senile old man with a pot of soup and a ladle, and he just keeps trying to stack it on top of it, and it's just pouring everywhere. So supporters of QAnon, the conspiracy theory that Democratic politicians are Satan-worshiping pedophiles, and that former President Donald Trump's mission in the White House was to stop them, have a new outlandish hypothesis that the police officers who died by suicide after surviving the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol have in fact been murdered by the deep state. Now, I've seen some of this. I haven't looked into it, but there are in fact police officers who responded to the January 6th thing.
It seems plausible because it seems like an inordinate amount of police officers involved in that have committed suicide in a very short time frame.
And they were like crying as they testified and stuff, right? I mean, these were full-blown sissies up there testifying.
Right. And 3 of them commit suicide?
Is it 3 now?
I've heard 4.
Okay, so more than I've heard, just several days ago.
In a sane world, it should go without saying that this is not just false, but also absurd and dangerous. But it's curious, and MSNBC, do you have an alternative hypothesis for why so many of these police officers have committed suicide?
They can't handle the stress. They have PTSD from the insurrection that they were forced to participate in.
Don't you just love that after surviving the January the 6th riot, were any cops harmed on that day?
Imagine having to go back to your peers and explain to them why you held the door open for insurrectionists.
But
trauma.
But unfortunately, it does not go without saying, and that's in part because mainstream right-wing disinformation surrounding the riot and the election. Both Republicans and QAnon are peddling evidence-free conspiracy theories. It's just that QAnons go a bit further. Political and media elites on the mainstream right are creating a climate in which the very idea of a knowable, shared reality is becoming extinct, and only in-groups can be trustworthy sources.
I don't necessarily disagree with that either.
But it's not just the people on the right who are doing it. Anyone peddling this nonsense about a COVID-19 pandemic is taking part in it.
Yeah.
Because in our shared real experience, we're not seeing this stuff.
The in-group thing is real. Like if you're on the left, you are likely more fearful of the virus, more likely to wear the masks, more likely to get the vaccine.
Yeah.
Right. And
more likely to be angry at people who aren't doing those things.
Right. And if you're on the right, it's completely different. So there's definitely an in-grouping of some kind where your reality is completely different.
There's still a large number of people on the right that are wearing masks and are going along with this, just not as many.
Understood.
In this environment, it's only natural for QAnon conspiracies, which about a quarter of Republicans subscribe to flourish and evolve. To that point, the latest QAnon theory stands out less for how strange it is than for how closely it tracks the way that Republicans have framed what happened on January the 6th.
Okay, but hold on. Where do you even go to see this QAnon guy at this point? Because from what I heard,
4chan, 8chan,
well,
one of the Chan
he used
channels?
to be on, or whoever it is, used to be on Twitter, right?
I don't know. I've never followed it.
Me neither. But as I understand it, there's stories here. Twitter has banned 70,000 QAnon accounts back in January after the January 6th thing. From what I understood, Vincent, who used to be a co-host here on Free Talk Live, he's followed this stuff, right? Because he kind of keeps his eye on the world of the alt-right and the fringe right. And
well, if he's listening, he could certainly call and let us know where people are still finding it.
The last time I heard him talking about it would have been back in January, and he said after the election, QAnon went silent. There was not one single tweet from QAnon post-November 2020. So
Which would be understandable for someone who was just making stuff up and finally ran out of ways to make stuff up.
It just disappeared. The account just went silent. So like when they're saying QAnon this, QAnon that, it's like, what does that even mean?
I think QAnon is bigger than, the Twitter handle itself. It's like a full-blown religion at this point.
Yes, but those people
priests.
follow QAnon. Yeah, but I think you're right. There are other people who've sort of taken the mantle, so to speak, and have anointed themselves as a QAnon supporter. Listen to me, sort of in the same way that remember when Ron Paul was a big deal and had huge publicity surrounding him. All of a sudden, there became this new thing called the Ron Paul Republican, where all these other no-name Republican guys who wanted to become something within the Republican Party slapped the Ron Paul label on themselves, even though Ron Paul probably never even heard of them before. He certainly didn't endorse them. They just started calling themselves a Ron Paul Republican. So if you want to get attention from the QAnon followers, just call yourself a QAnon, priest or whatever, and now you're a QAnon priest.
Or the fact that no one really knows who he was, maybe,
to begin with. Maybe it was John McAfee.
Yeah, well, it could also be much like, the V for Vendetta movie, right? The idea of QAnon persist beyond the man himself.
I think that's what's going on here.
And what was the idea of QAnon? It was a supposed insider, right, within the Trump administration who makes predictions about what was going to happen.
Or who knew what was going on the inside, which is why Trump was going to get, put back into office in a couple of weeks here.
But was it ever even correct?
No, I don't think
QAnon
so.
account?
No. I don't think there was ever any prediction that QAnon made that ever actually
That's why it was always 4D chess and 8D chess, and
right.
the reason we're losing is because it's part of a grander scheme and a bigger plan. That you just got to wait 2 more months for it to come to fruition.
Just like, Harold Camping, the guy constantly predicting apocalypses. But, the QAnon believers are religious believers just like any other, and no amount of being proven wrong is going to cause them to lose faith in their priest.
Because it's part of the master plan.
More about QAnon and Republicans coming up, but maybe you can answer some of our questions. How are people finding QAnon these days? 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
QAnon finds you.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
On March 16th this year, government task forces violently raided the New Hampshire Bitcoin Embassy, the Mighty Moose Mart, the homes of Aria DiMezzo, Andy and Renee Spinella, Colleen Fordham, a grandmother, and perhaps most relevant, the studios of Free Talk Live. The Crypto Six were arrested. 4 were released on bail conditions, but Ian Freeman was held hostage for 69 days. Rich Paul, also known as Nobody, remains captive. We've consulted attorneys who say no crime even appears to have been committed. But that didn't stop the Joint Thug Task Force from ripping out wires from our broadcast stacks, taking Free Talk Live off the air, resulting in a violation of our and your First Amendment rights. You can visit thecrypto6.com to help, but as importantly, contact other media and tell them about this outrage. This case is likely to set precedent for cryptocurrency use well into your future. Help our fight for liberty and financial freedom at thecrypto6.com.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. That's the number if you want to join us. That's 603-283-6160. And we're also kind of sick of getting kicked off of tech platforms here, getting banned, getting censored, being told we can't do this, we can't do that, or having our post flagged as medical misinformation, or having stupid alerts put on everything. And that's why we've been migrating over the years to decentralized platforms such as Odyssey, which Free Talk Live has been using as an archive for our videos for several years now. They now have a new streaming service, which you can find at odyssey.com. That's ODYSEE.com. We have a channel there. It has Odyssey has more than 1 million channels now, so definitely check it out. Ours is video.freetalklive.com. Every Wednesday, we do a topless episode of She Talk Live.
The most well-watched video of Free Talk Live in all of social media.
It does seem to be that way. And that's at video.freetalklive.com, same time as every other show. And I mean, that's one of the reasons we stream it there, is because we're not going to get kicked off of there just for sitting around topless having a conversation. While even though we do that here on Tuesday nights, Twitch, YouTube, all of them, they never take issue with it. However, they certainly would take issue with this. So that's video.freetalklive.com. If you want to get away from the big tech censorship that we're seeing everywhere, then check out Odyssey, video.freetalklive.com. Let's go to the phones. We got Michael calling from Atlanta. Michael, you're on Free Talk Live.
How are you doing tonight?
Hey, what's on your mind?
I was calling. I wanted to give my 2 cents on this whole QAnon thing. In my opinion, I can't prove this. Has anyone considered that QAnon might be a creation of the Trump administration itself to distract people from Trump's consistent failure to live up to his promises? I don't really care if you love him or hate him. The fact is, Trump made promises. He failed to keep them consistently. You can't say the same about Obama. And
Sure, you
can't
can.
say the same about Biden. Yes, you can, but not in the same way. Build the wall, lock her up. It didn't happen.
Well, Obama did promise to, be the peace president, to close Guantanamo Bay, and he did not fulfill any of those promises.
Immigration headline from the AP: immigration detentions soar despite Biden's campaign promises.
He did promise socialized medicine, and he definitely set the stage for it. No politician can be fully believed.
Of course not.
I mean, Donald Trump certainly did some of the things that he promised to do as well.
Oh, he did. A few things.
Yeah.
Trump promised to keep guns, for example, not put restrictions. Who put an assault weapon? Who banned bump stocks?
Trump did.
Federally, it was Trump.
That's right.
Exactly. And under which presidency did the assault weapons ban expire, and did he not do anything about it? It was Obama.
That's right.
Exactly. Again, no politician can be fully trusted, but you wonder, considering, like you said, the QAnon posts appeared all of a sudden during the Trump administration, and they stopped after November 20th, makes you wonder, was this really, and again, we'll probably never know, was this just some guy, or was it perhaps, I don't know, maybe one of Jared Kushner's people doing a propaganda campaign to get people excited and interested, and then once they didn't need it anymore, they just let the account drop.
I think Trump's ego is too big to do something that would allow him to lose the last election.
The most compelling thing I've ever heard, and I don't remember all of the evidence now, but I mean, there's pretty good reason to believe that QAnon is the person behind it is the creator of 8chan, if I recall correctly. That seems to be the most.
Frederick Brennan.
Yeah, I guess that's his name, but that seems to be the most likely explanation at this point,
right?
Because he had information that only QAnon and himself would have had, or something like that.
And if that's the case, because again, we don't know. If that's the case, it makes you wonder what relationship he had with the administration, if he had one. And
he had none. He was
on a
just
payroll,
trolling.
Propaganda agent.
Yeah. It was a very effective troll.
That's what I tend to think. It was just a troll, and unfortunately, a lot of people believed it. But, Michael, thank you so much for the call tonight. I have to agree, I don't think Trump has the ego to do something like this and not claim responsibility for it, or to even use QAnon as a way of hedging his bets against failure, because that would require Donald Trump to admit that he was failing to do some things. And I don't think he's capable of that.
Mm-hmm. It was during one of his press conferences, or maybe one of the debates. He said, "Can you imagine if I lose to this guy? Like, can you imagine? Like, this is like the worst candidate ever. And can you imagine what it would be like to be me and lose this?" And then bam, lost it.
And that's how Hillary must have felt when she lost to him. I mean, there is no system quite like United States politics at finding the two worst, most terrible human beings and pitting them against each other. And then instead of putting these people into institutions where they belong, making them the most powerful official in the country. You got to give the United States government credit for that. It figured out a way not just to find the worst human being in the country, but to hand them inordinate amounts of power.
We got to secede.
Absolutely. We've also got Major Payne calling from Michigan. Major Payne, you're on Free Talk Live. Are you there? Going once. Seem to have lost him. Well, we've got David calling from New Mexico. Yay. David, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, yeah, David Brent Olson, David Olson 333, and I am not suicidal. And I've been monitoring our government, my government, 24/7 for the last 14 years. That's why I'm calling, and I got some new information today that should be interesting. And once again, in short, the reason I'm doing this is because my government illegally trafficked my children 14 years ago, said goodbye to them one day, not knowing I'd never see them again, and I have never seen them again in spite of a unanimous win at our New Mexico Court of Appeals saying that my children were illegally trafficked by Judge M. Monica Zamora and Judge John J. Romero Jr. and others, which I won't waste your time naming, but those are the main two presently. So the new information, and it ties in with the best part of last night actually didn't get said, and that is that the mayor in Las Vegas, New Mexico, aka Little Vegas, Tanita Gurley Giron, was sentenced for her. She forged signatures in an attempt to get extra votes for her to keep herself in office as mayor.
What was the sentence?
That's the best part. That's the best part. That's what I'm calling to tell you. Okay, why don't you take a guess what the sentence is?
Probation.
She forged votes to try to win an office, to stay in office. I'm going to say she got a slap on the hand and has to do 10 hours community service.
And then she got pardoned.
I'm going to say she just can't hold public office in the future.
No way. We'll hope that's a given. However, here's what she got. Right. Well, here's what she got. She for attempting to steal the what do you call it? The franchisement, the civil rights to vote and control their own government of the voters of the city of Las Vegas.
David, get to the
New Mexico.
sentence. What was the sentence?
She got $1,000 fine, 18 months probation, and she has to say, "I'm sorry."
I mean, to be fair, that's
too much.
That's more than I expected them to have given her. I didn't expect the $1,000 fine.
Whoopie-doo.
David, thank you so much for the call tonight. I mean,
sentence is commuted. She's pardoned.
Election fraud of the lowest order. $1,000 fine.
Yeah.
If you go out and vote more than once, you're going to jail for like a felony.
Absolutely insane. 603-283-6160. $1,000 fine for trying to steal an election? That's the kind of thing we rail against here on Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Karl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave. The Taliban has made substantial territorial advances in 3 northern regional capitals just weeks before US troops are due to leave Afghanistan. They've also launched attacks on Lashkar-Gah in the south and Herat in the west. Dominic Nichols is Defence and Security Editor for the Telegraph newspaper in the UK, who served for 23 years in the British Army.
It sounds as if the Afghan government forces have got the upper hand now in Lashkar-Gah, but it's taken a huge effort. They had to fly in a load of commandos and relied on air power, both from the Afghan Air Force and the US. They've taken, over the last few days, up to sort of 10 to 15 airstrikes a day from the US and from the Afghan Air Force. And that's what it's required to retake that capital. So can they do that everywhere? Probably not.
US President Joe Biden has given no indication that he's reconsidering the drawdown. The US and UK have also advised their citizens to leave the country as the violence between the Taliban and Afghan forces gathers pace. Thousands of people have been evacuated from Greece's largest island, Evia, because of wildfires. Dozens have broken out across the country and have been burning for days. But Evia's is the worst, creating scenes that have been described as apocalyptic. It comes as Greece experienced its most intense heatwave in 3 decades, with temperatures reaching a blistering 45 degrees Celsius. Several countries have sent planes and firefighters to help fight the towering flames, with more support arriving in the coming days. The causes of the blazes are being investigated. 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of starting fires, in 2 cases intentionally. Officials in Greece and Europe have also pointed to climate change following fires from the south of Italy to Turkey to Siberia in Russia. Greece's Prime Minister warned the country could face a nightmarish summer of forest fires. And the Tokyo 2020 Olympics are now officially over. After 16 days of competition in an unprecedented and controversial event amid the coronavirus pandemic, the United States took home the most gold medals with 39. John Matthews reports from Tokyo.
Well, the closing ceremonies naturally don't carry the same level of pomp and circumstance the opening ceremonies do. I think the human stories really stand out. The story of 2 high jumpers from Italy and Qatar, they're good friends and rivals for years. They chose to share their gold medals instead of going into a tiebreaker. The story of Simone Biles stepping away from final competitions because she wasn't in a headspace to do her best, and then coming back and medaling in her final event, showing she still had the goods. There have only been 409 cases confirmed among Games affiliates from July 1st until the closing ceremony. Now, that's less than 1% of all stakeholders, but people on the streets are telling us the Games going on despite the pandemic have encouraged them to take risks related to COVID.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You're welcome to join us. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
Rich.
Yeah, it's Ian.
I want to say thank you to Bandito, who is tonight's amplifier. This means Bandito is a member of the AMP program. You can find it at amp.freetalklive.com. That's amp.freetalklive.com. It stands for Advertise, Market, and Promote. Bandito is a gold member, which means that Bandito is giving at least $10 per month to the AMP program, but we don't ask that. It's just $5 per month. That gets you in, and it's money that is used strictly to advertise, market, and promote Free Talk Live to get us on more radio stations to help us reach a larger audience with the ideas of liberty. So if you value that, you may consider joining the AMP program such as Bandito did and helping us reach more radio stations, larger audiences with the podcast, all of that awesome stuff. So thank you, Bandito. We hope you're enjoying the show. We've got Major Payne again, who's calling from Michigan. Major Payne, you're on Free Talk Live.
Good evening. Good evening. Earlier, you guys were talking about TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome.
Right.
And, well, there's a bit of a basis for it. I mean, I'm in one of the states, and we're purple. And I think all the rest of the states where the votes were very questionable were purple. And the one that you can't deny the math, Trump got more votes than any other popular president.
And Biden got more than that.
Was not popular. Biden was not popular. There is no way that this thing could have transpired as it did without some hoodoo voodoo.
Let me posit a theory for you then, because you have to remember that the election took place in the middle of a quote-unquote pandemic under lockdown.
Yeah,
so,
and that made it even easier with the postman. I myself got 5 ballots delivered to my house. Right. I could have filled them out any way I wanted to.
But that also means that people who would, like I said earlier, more likely to mask up and quarantine tend to lean left Democrat, which means that those are the people that would have stayed home, would not have gone to rallies, would have just silently supported their guy. And so it would not be that surprising that all the people staying home and not wearing masks and not going to rallies would vote for Biden, and that's why he got more votes.
But I think it's still fair to say that there wasn't a lot of excitement about Joe Biden. I don't recall seeing anyone on social media.
A lot of Democrats were holding their nose and voting for him.
Yeah, I don't recall. Oh my God!
But they still voted for him.
Yeah, thank goodness we got Biden
because he's not Trump,
right? Which was enough for a lot of people.
Beyond that,
that's why a lot of people voted for Trump in 2016 too, because he wasn't Hillary.
Yeah,
we had the Dominion voting machine here in Michigan, and I think they were in a lot of the other purple states. These things were invented in Venezuela, and they've been stealing elections there for over a decade. Okay?
Sure.
Okay.
The ballots they issued here in Michigan, on the front side, you had to fill out every little chalk mark, you know what I mean, the ABC box with your pencil or pen or whatever.
Right.
And then on the other side, you could just file Democrat or Republican on the top of the ballot.
See, they used to have that in New Hampshire.
All you got to do is flop those two.
Yeah.
And bang, it's invalid. Everything's done.
Yeah, they used to have those in New Hampshire. Thankfully, they got rid of them. Now, in a true example of not learning anything from the last election, they're considering bringing these back, even though people even though people just voting straight Republican is how they ended up with a trans, anarchist, atheist, Satanist sheriff candidate.
But so we should want them to bring it back.
I don't want them to bring it back. I want them to have learned a valuable lesson about how stupid the voting system is.
You give people too much credit.
I know.
There's a county in the middle of Michigan called Antrim, okay? And it is like redneck USA. And this thing went for Biden, and there's no way this could have happened. It went like 98% for Biden.
Right. So
this was the last degenerate lumber camp in Michigan. This is where all the inbreeders and rejects were left 100 years ago.
The other thing I can say confidently is I don't think there have been free and fair elections in the United States in my lifetime. So the only thing that happened in 2020 was Biden cheated better than Trump cheated.
Mm-hmm.
And if Trump had cheated just a little bit better, right, just 10 million votes better, right, then he would have stolen the election as well.
Yeah, to me, the whole thing's irrelevant. I don't consider any aspect of the state to be legitimate, much less the president. So I don't care which.
You guys remember how inexperienced Minnesota was, a decade or two ago in stealing elections? Who was it, Al Franken? Found 10,000 votes in the trunk of a Le Mans parked in the back of somebody's barn or some damn thing. It was crazy. I mean, this whole thing is just ridiculous, and they're just trying to figure out a way to. I don't know. I'm without words to respond anymore.
It doesn't matter either way.
So you're still voting?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Thank you for the call tonight, Major Payne. Yeah, I've never found much use for voting outside of local elections, and that's mostly just because, especially here in New Hampshire, I tend to personally know the people I'm voting for. And if I don't know them or anything about them, I just don't vote in that particular race, which I think is a sensible way to handle. But yeah, there's no reason whatsoever to have any faith in the voting system in the United States. For all you know, Donald Trump received 4 votes and Joe Biden received 6. I mean, there's no reason to believe that any of the numbers they put forward actually have any validity whatsoever and weren't just made up on the spot.
And as far as cheating is concerned, it's amazing how Trump knew what was going to happen prior to it happening and then didn't like cheat and mitigate it in some form or fashion.
Well, I'm sure he attempted to.
Well, then again, didn't cheat hard enough, right? Because leading up to it, he said like, oh, you're going to have all these mail-in votes. They're obviously going to use it to steal the election. This is not going to be a fair election. And then where did all the votes for Biden that came out of nowhere were in the mail-in stack? Whereas like,
Sure.
so you knew, like you had their playbook and you still couldn't defeat them.
Well, the DNC has a long history of rigging elections and manipulating facts and, just doing all sorts of shady things to get the person they want placed in power. That's why Hillary was the candidate back in 2016 for them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was facing an enemy that was probably significantly better at rigging elections than he was.
But he had the playbook.
Yeah, but it was during a pandemic in an era that, didn't really inspire Republicans to get out and vote.
All right.
But it did. But Democrats were still inspired to vote against Donald Trump because they suffered from Trump derangement syndrome.
5 or 6 times by mail, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they did that or not, but Democrats were certainly more eager to vote in this election than Republicans were because they were the ones who wanted to get rid of Donald Trump. And the Republicans, all they really had to offer was 4 more years of what we've been doing.
Well, and then again, to be fair, Trump as the Republican still got more votes in the history of American politics, with the exception of one person, Joe Biden, whom he happened to be going up against in that election. So it's not like the Republicans stayed home. Like they still went out en masse and said, like, we want to keep this guy in, and then we're outnumbered by the biggest numbers in history.
Okay, can we secede now?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly my point, because I don't care how many of these people actually voted. I don't care if it was 70 million or 100 million. I didn't vote for either one of them.
It's still not legitimate.
No, I mean, and they don't have the right to vote for the person who's going to roll over me. And it's insane to think that these ignorant voters in California or New Mexico or Arkansas or Michigan or whatever state are choosing who is going to roll over me. When they're completely and totally ignorant. And we know this to be true, that the primary voters are supposed to be the well-informed, well-connected voters. But as we saw here in Cheshire County, no, they're just as ignorant as the masses, if not more so.
Right. And I'm not trying to suggest that it's important or relevant, only that apathy was not a factor in the last election.
I don't know if it was or not, to be honest.
I mean, when you put up those numbers,
that's still only half of Americans, though.
Okay.
That's only like 150 million.
And only half of them voted for one side or the other. So it's still, not the majority of people.
Right. No, it's like 1 in 4 at best. The rest of us the majority of Americans seem to just want to be left alone by this thing, and it refuses to do, it wants to do everything except that.
Understood. But you can't say that the Republicans lost because Republicans didn't go out to vote. They did in larger numbers ever in history.
Well, it's not a zero-sum game, really. I mean, the Republicans lost because more people voted for the Democrats.
Right.
But no matter which one of them won, I was going to lose because I don't support either of them.
Agreed.
603-283-6160 if you want to join us. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Uncovering the secrets and exposing the lies. That's what the readers of freedomsphoenix.com get every day. freedomsphoenix.com, constantly providing the information, the real news about government policies, and the real relationship we all have with the coercive government. The real condition of the economy, innovations in technology, breakthroughs in energy, health, and computer science. Learn the truth well before it's admitted to in the lamestream media. The corporate media, nothing more than distributors of government propaganda, but now there's an alternative. freedomsphoenix.com. Constant news updates on the issues that affect your life in the most important ways. With liberty and property under constant attack, freedomsphoenix.com provides the understanding behind the propaganda, and it encourages the participation of its readers. Go to freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. freedomsphoenix.com. The revolution between the ears has already happened.
Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live with Arya, Ian, and Rich. And we mentioned earlier about video.freetalklive.com because we're sick of big tech censorship here, and we're doing everything we can to get away from it, including creating our own social media server. You can find it at social.freetalklive.com. It uses Mastodon, which is very similar to, it's got a very similar look and feel to Twitter, so you'll be relatively familiar with it, but it's also, defederated. So, I'm sorry, not defederated, it's federated, which means that there's no central server that can, silence you forever like you can with Twitter and Facebook. I mean, in theory, yes, Ian or someone could, censor you and shut down your account, but that seems kind of unlikely. But you could also create your own
Mastodon instance.
Yeah, you can make your own Mastodon server.
Yeah.
And it's probably kind of complicated to do, but
if you know Linux, then you could do it. If you're a server admin kind of quality level person.
Cool, or you could just join ours. I mean, it's easy. Yeah. There's a number of step-by-step.
Or join Gab, or join, one of the other thousands of Mastodon servers if you don't like us.
Gab is a Mastodon server?
Yeah, they went Mastodon. They weren't originally, but a few years ago they changed to Mastodon, and the leftists that program Mastodon had an SFIT over it.
I did not know about that development.
Yeah, they were like, oh my God, we made this so anyone could use it. We didn't think you guys would. They couldn't stop them. But all they can do is disconnect from them.
And recently they tried to get them shut down by saying we should just get them to turn off the servers. Like, we own our own servers and you can't. It's federated.
Yep, that's the value in it. Social.freetalklive.com if you want to join us. But let's go to the phones. We've got Robert listening on WTKG in Michigan. Robert, you're on Free Talk Live.
Gentlemen, thanks for taking my call.
Hey, Robert.
What's on your mind tonight?
You're talking about voter fraud, and the last gentleman, Major Payne, made some valid points, and I would like to maybe support some of that a little bit. I'd like to think that I'm a level-headed, fairly educated, well-informed individual. I'm definitely conservative, and I don't believe for one hot second that the election was even remotely legitimate.
Which election in your lifetime was legitimate?
Well, I think they've taken it to a whole new level because I think the left took advantage of changing some laws that were clearly unconstitutional as far as how to vote. I think they counted on the chaos of the pandemic to play under the radar, and I think they did it in a random enough way in key areas such as Arizona, Pennsylvania, perhaps Michigan. I live in Michigan. That makes it just plausible enough that it was legit.
Robert, I would agree this election was fraudulent, but they're all fraudulent.
Yeah, so what are you going to do about it?
Well, and that's the sad part. Because I'm a conservative, not a Republican, in my humble opinion, I think the Democrats, and this is just my opinion, I believe that the Democrats are evil and the Republicans are just boneheaded, scared idiots. So unfortunately, I don't
who
think
are committing
much can
evil
be
in their
done.
boneheaded scaredy-catness.
You're absolutely correct. But another example of the voter fraud situation is the audit in Arizona. I heard very recently on what I believe to be a reputable news organization that the Attorney General has either resigned or stepped back from the audit, mainly because he is being completely kept out of the dark. And I find it very curious that in several of these states, the Democrats, and they could very well be, just poking a stick to poke a stick at the bear. I get that completely. When you have the power and the control, you certainly have that right. The right's no different if they were in control. But I find it very interesting that if everything was as legitimate as they are claiming it is, that they would say, come on in, take a look, see what you can find. And because they haven't been forthright and cooperative, it just makes things worse. And quite frankly, gentlemen, and I'm not a politically correct person by any means, the term Trump derangement syndrome really ticks me off. Because the left is just as fanatical in their beliefs of their side as we are, and you don't hear the negative.
Robert, Trump derangement syndrome was invented as a way of characterizing how insane the left became over the character of Donald Trump.
That's true.
Well, but I think it's been turned around and used against the conservatives and those. And I'm not saying there
would be the left to turn the weapons of the right against them.
Look, hey,
And
if
they
you
are
actually
masters at that.
let's accept the idea that the election was fraudulent, and I also agree that all elections are just a huge scam because government's a scam and it's a violent group of thugs ruling over us. But if you actually believe in the idea of government, and you sort of consent to the idea of government, which I don't think any of us on this show do. But if you did, and you believe that this election, this 2020 election, was fraudulent, shouldn't that mean that the deal's now it's over, right? Like they've broken their agreement to be on the up and up, and so therefore you shouldn't pay taxes and you shouldn't obey them anymore, right?
The problem with that theory is that the government, it's just like, the government makes a big deal about all the gun owners out there. The problem is with that and with any argument as far as if you don't believe in the government and things they do, not just with votes, but with anything, is that they're a little bit more organized. They may not be as intelligent, but they're a lot more organized, and their numbers en masse would outweigh any sort of
Robert, I think you're
uprising.
really close to hitting upon a really important point here, which is that you have to obey because if you don't, the government will kill you.
But they're going to hurt you, no doubt about it. But not if you got a large enough number of people, and there's way more people than there are government people. Like, there's more just on the Republican side. You know, if all the people who believed in the stop the steal or that the election was fraudulent just said tomorrow, you know what, we're done, we're not participating in this anymore, no more taxes, we're no longer following your regulations, they wouldn't be able to put everyone in prison.
Yeah. What I want to see is, like, en masse, is the one issue tax protester, right? The government does the one thing that I don't like them to do, and therefore I'm not giving them any money. Because if everyone did that, everyone has that one thing they don't like the government doing, and then no one would pay.
But you don't need everyone. You'll never get everyone. If you just had 10%, honestly, that would be more than enough. Sure. That's more than you had during the revolutionary times as far as, you know, disobedience and non-cooperation.
But I want it to be on the one issue, right? Just pick your one issue and then stop.
But it's scary because they're going to crash. Somebody's going to get their home busted in. Somebody's going to get their head cracked open. Somebody's going to go to prison, you know, and it's no one wants that to be them. So that's why they rule over people so effectively, because it's just total fear.
Yeah, Robert, that's exactly what you're saying here, is that, you know, it doesn't matter how fraudulent the election is, and it doesn't matter that, you know, they broke the agreement, they weren't on the up and up, so the whole thing's just fraudulent now, it should be wiped out. None of that matters because they're the government, they're more organized, they have more guns.
And unfortunately, I think what they're going to do is whoever's in charge, because, I mean, let's face it, we all
Trump
know
is
the government
clearly still
is a
in
mess.
charge.
Well,
so do you agree with my assessment of your position, Robert, that it doesn't matter how fraudulent or how unright?
I agree. And they're
so why continue having a government if it doesn't matter how? Why continue having a government if it doesn't matter how corrupt they are, how fraudulent they are?
How do you get rid of it? I think they've marketed us into, or they've programmed our brains into so many things to be afraid of. And all the information out there that they track, and they've instilled in our brains that they could find us in a heartbeat. I mean, you look at your phone, and it tracks everywhere you go.
He's right. I mean, he's totally legitimate here. How do you get rid of it? That is a great question.
Stop giving the money. Get into cryptocurrency. Stop using the USD.
But they're coming after people for crypto now.
They are, but they can't come after everyone.
No, they can't, but no one wants to be first. Well, look what happens to us.
That's what happens.
Well, the first have already gone first. I mean,
yeah, but that's
pioneers
the thing.
Get shot in the back.
Here's an answer, and look, you could describe yourself as a conservative, so it's probably not for you. But I think the conservatives could do sort of a variant on this. Get together in the same geographic area and start a conservative state project. We've got the freedom, movement here. We're libertarians. We're migrating to the same place. That's the way out to me, is to get together with other like-minded people who share your values and create a society that reflects those values. It's not an overnight project. It's going to take some amount of time to do this, but just hoping that you're going to take it back at the next election is a plan to fail.
Make the United States states again.
Yeah, and secede as soon as possible.
As much as I don't believe in the government as far as their ability to govern honestly and fairly and justly, I mean, life is not fair in general, but it seems to be getting worse and worse one way or the other. I think even if we were...
Robert, I got to cut you off. We're out of time for the night, but thank you so much tonight for the call. Definitely, if you're a liberty-minded person, get to New Hampshire. I do want to see New Hampshire secede. I do think that would be a better way. At least then the United States government isn't our problem anymore.
At least then we can protest in front of the governor's house if we need to.
Yes. But thanks for listening. Go check out our social media site. Again, that's social.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links